So, you got 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 2 nostrils. These doubles allow for greater vision, clearer sounds, and super smelling. Our nostrils are separated by cartilage called the septum. Thanks to this, your nose is able to go through the nasal cycle. That's when one of your nostrils works harder than the other. Every few hours they switch. This closing and opening of your nasal passages happens when the tissues inside your nose swell and deflate. Having one low airflow nostril at any time allows your sensors to detect slow-acting odors more easily. It gives you a greater range of smell. The nasal cycle also helps your nose to fulfill its functions as a humidifier and air filter. Our finger and toenails are usually a pale pink color. A lighter moon-shaped crescent at the bottom of the nail is known as the lunula. Our nail matrix creates new skin cells. They push out old skin cells to make our fingernails. Any injuries to the nail bed or irregularities that affect the matrix area might also affect the nail growth. Excessive nail biting, manicures, pedicures, and everyday nail injuries can lead to little marks and white spots on your nails. Nails grow very slowly, too. A fingernail can take anywhere between 6 and 9 months to regrow completely. And a toenail takes between 12 and 18 months. It means that the white spots on your nails might be the result of an injury, which could have happened several months before you noticed something was wrong. Brushing your teeth too hard is possible, and it's not good for your teeth at all. It's likely to wear down the enamel and make them sensitive to hot and cold food and drinks. Teeth don't repair themselves, so you've got to take care of them. To develop a new habit, you'll need around 2 months. It usually takes around 66 days on average for the habit to stick. Our heads produce a lot of oil and skin cells. Every minute of the day, people lose around 30,000 to 40,000 skin cells, even when they're not moving. You have around 10,000 taste buds, but there are people, they're called super tasters, that have even more than that. Thanks to this unusual ability, sweet things like oranges, strawberries, and candies are almost too sweet for them. As for bitter things, for example broccoli, cabbage, spinach, grapefruit, or coffee, they're simply overwhelming. Fingerprints are unique to each person, but we also have individual tongue prints. I hope we stick with checking fingerprints. I'd hate to have to lick a scanner. Over the course of a day, you lose on average about 60 strands of hair. Teeth are a part of the skeletal system, but they aren't counted as bones. They don't have the same regenerative power that bones do. That's why they don't grow back if something happens to them. A hug longer than 20 seconds will produce the hormone oxytocin. This can lower blood pressure, slow your heart rate, help relieve stress, and improve your mood. When you submerge yourself in water, it can cause your heart rate to drop and oxygen consumption to slow. In recent years, free divers have pushed human lung limits by going down to a record 700 feet. Wow, that's breathtaking. You might be wondering how a person could hold their breath for so long to reach this impressive depth. But the longest someone has held their breath is more than 24.5 minutes. We experience G-forces at home simply by sitting down on the couch too quickly, sneezing, or having someone slap our back when we're joking. Pilot John Stapp demonstrated a human could withstand 46.2 Gs for a few seconds. That's a force equal to 4 tons. The human lungs contain around 1,500 miles of airways and a total surface area of about 750 square feet when laid flat. Your lungs are on the clock 24/7, keeping you alive and breathing. You take 12 to 15 breaths a minute, which makes about 17,000 a day. Your left lung is slightly smaller than the right one to make room for your big heart. If you don't have a heart, well hey, I can't help you with that. Humans aren't the biggest, fastest, or strongest creatures on Earth. But we're the best at long-distance running. Our legs' special structure, the ability to sweat to regulate body heat, and our upright posture makes us great runners. 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night is recommended if you want to function properly the next day. But there are people who only need 6 hours or less a night. It's actually a genetic anomaly that makes them need less sleep. Once they're awake, they feel totally refreshed. Randy Gardner decided to test how long a person could go without sleep. He and his friends conducted this experiment for their science fair project. It started in 1963 and finished at the beginning of 1964. The guy managed to stay awake and functioning for 11 days and 25 minutes. When tested during and after the experiment, Randy could even play basketball, and his brain was functioning normally all this time. Shedding tears when you cry helps release your stress hormone. It also might stimulate the production of endorphins. This makes you feel good once you're finished. Some blind people can actually see with the help of a process called flash sonar. Using clicking sounds to navigate an area or even ride a bike, they create 3D images in their mind. You can't breathe and swallow at the same time. Well, mostly. To prevent any food or liquid from entering your lungs, a small flap called the epiglottis covers your windpipe. It doesn't always work. That's why you sometimes choke on food or drink. Human bodies contain so much iron, it'd be enough to make a medium-sized nail. Your body has more than 600 muscles. The strongest is located in your jaw and is known as the masseter. It helps you open and close your jaw. The stapedius skeletal muscle is the weakest. It's located in your ear. The human body actually glows, but the intensity of this light is 1,000 times lower than what you can see with your eyes. You're about a half-inch taller in the morning than when you go to bed. When you move around during the day, the soft cartilage between your bones gets compressed, and you become shorter. Messages your nerves send to the brain travel at over 200 miles per hour. It's like NASCAR having a race in your body. The longest bone in your body is the femur. It's located in your thigh. The smallest bone is the stapes. It's one of the ossicles in your ear. By the way, 1/4 of all your body's bones are in your feet. Get equipped for any season with brand new Brightside merch. Click the link and grab your print. So far, the fastest anyone has run is just over 27 miles per hour. This speed was reached by sprinter Usain Bolt in 2009. Bolt could move even faster, but he has a slow reaction time to the starting gun. His stride length makes up for that slight delay, though. Every day, your body produces 330 billion new cells. In roughly 90 days, 30 trillion cells get replaced. Now, if all the blood vessels in the human body were placed end to end, they would make around 60,000 miles. Considering the Earth is almost 25,000 miles around, your blood vessels could encircle it 2.5 times. Phantom vibration syndrome makes you think your phone is vibrating when it isn't. Those bumps on your tongue aren't your taste buds. They're called papilla. The papilla contain your taste buds and measure the temperature of your food. Their rough texture also helps you eat your food more efficiently. The fingernails on your dominant hand grow faster than on the other one. The more activity, the better the blood flow. Toenails grow more slowly than fingernails because they don't experience as much stress. The less stress, the slower blood flow. The ability to hear or feel your own heartbeat is called rubatosis. This unsettling feeling of your heart beating can happen after exercising or during times of high stress. The space between your eyebrows is called the glabella. It means smooth. When you sneeze, the air comes out of your nose at 100 miles per hour. If your brain was a computer, it would perform 36,000 trillion operations per second. Cats and dogs can be allergic to people, but the culprit will most likely be your perfume or soap, not your natural scent. 60% of your brain is made of fat. In fact, it's the fattiest organ in the body. The temperature of a beehive is about the same as that of a healthy human's body, around 98 degrees Fahrenheit. Bees can also cool down or warm up the hive by flapping their wings. You can burn around 100 calories just from standing up for an hour. Over time, your brain has more and more problems with long-term memory. It gets more difficult to remove older memories. It means your brain has to work much harder the older you grow to produce new memories.
You can't recall a memory all by itself. When you're trying to think of one detail, like the color of the t-shirt your friend was wearing the other week, you'll remember some other details too. For example, the place where you saw him, things you were talking about. The hippocampus is the part of your brain that stores memories. It usually packs them together, including multiple small details. On average, taste buds last 10 days, clusters of sensory cells in your tongue. The buds that are closer to the surface are more short-lived. That's the reason you don't have to wait for too long to be able to taste again after burning your tongue. One theory says déjà vu is some sort of a brain processing lag. Scientists think it might happen when your brain is transferring information from one side to the other, and there's a split-second delay in that process. That means that your brain gets the same information twice and processes it as the event that happened before. Only 30% of people can flare their nostrils, and 1/3 can bend their thumb backward. Some people can produce a roaring noise in their heads. All they have to do is tense their ears or jaws. There's a small muscle in the ear. It dampens loud sounds, like when you're chewing. But some people can flex that muscle, and that creates an audible rumble. Your fingertips are sensitive, but hundreds of times less so than your lips. You inhale lots of different types of debris, including 700,000 of your own skin flakes, and that's only in a day. A hypnic jerk is a twitch you can experience when falling asleep. It's an abrupt muscle movement that comes during the non-REM sleep phase. It can create an illusion of falling. One of the theories is that, when you're dozing off, your brain sees the relaxing of your muscles as a sign you're in trouble and really falling. So it sends signals to the muscles to protect you by tensing up. Synesthesia is a special and rare ability where people can taste music or hear colors. Only 1 in every 2,000 people has it. For some people, cilantro may taste similar to soap because the plant contains a chemical used in soap making. But only 4 to 14% of the world's population have special genes that can detect it. 18% of people can move both ears at the same time, while 22% can move one ear at once. People who do it use weak vestigial muscles we got from the ancestor humans, who had this in common with cats. Bruises change their color over time. A bruise appears because there's bleeding under the skin. Tiny blood vessels get crushed, and some blood gets trapped in there. In the beginning, a bruise is red because the blood is rich in oxygen. But then, it turns purple, green, yellow, or even gray when the levels of oxygen drop. Sweat doesn't smell itself. The unpleasant odor is caused by bacteria on your skin. When sweat comes out of the pores on your body, the bacteria breaks it down into acids. What most deodorants actually do is get rid of the bacteria on your skin. People used to dream in black and white much more than today. That's because they watched black and white TV. Blue cheese is another thing that affects your dreams and makes them more vivid. Eggshells might be used for growing new human bones. Chicken eggshells contain calcium carbonate, which is something you also have in your bones. The food on the plane is likely to taste different than on the ground. That's because you lose up to 30% of your taste bud sensitivity due to the dryness and pressure in the cabin. It's especially true about salty and sweet foods. Your nostrils don't work with the same efficiency all the time. When you breathe, one nostril does most of the work, and they switch every couple of hours. You wouldn't be able to taste food without saliva. Your taste buds have chemoreceptors that recognize different flavors, but they need some liquid for those flavors to bind into their molecules. Also, you can't taste things saliva doesn't dissolve. The brain can't actually feel pain. It does have a pain center, but it doesn't have pain receptors itself. When your head hurts, you can feel it because of the nerves, tissues, and blood vessels around your brain. A single human hair can support 3.5 ounces of weight. That's how much 2 candy bars weigh. Toenails grow almost 4 times more slowly than fingernails that get more exposure and are used more frequently. There must be at least some photos where you have red eyes. When the camera's flash goes off, your eyes aren't prepared for such an influx of light. Your pupils remain dilated, which is why the light gets reflected off the red blood vessels of the choroid. This is a layer of tissue at the back of your eye that nourishes your retina. The right lung is bigger than the left one because your body needs to make some room for the heart. Your teeth are the only part of your body that can heal itself. The masseter is the strongest muscle you have, based on its weight. Together with the rest of the raw muscles, it can close your teeth with a force of 200 pounds on the molars and 55 pounds on the incisors. Onions produce a special chemical irritant. It stimulates special glands in your eyes, causing them to release tears. Your nose can memorize up to 50,000 different scents and detect more than 1 trillion of odors. We all have our unique smell, except for identical twins. This smell is partly determined by genetics, but it also depends on your diet, hygiene, and the environment. Eating snow is not the best way to stay hydrated. Your body needs too much energy to turn it into water. Snow can provide a bit of hydration, but it'll also lower the temperature of your body, which isn't the best scenario if you're trying to survive harsh winter conditions. You burn somewhere between 100 and 200 calories per hour while standing. Sitting burns 60 to 130 calories, depending on your height, weight, gender, and age. Brain freeze is an annoying ice cream headache. That's how your brain tells you to slow down and maybe stop eating something that's so cold. The main purpose of eyelashes is to shield your eyes and protect them from sand, moisture, dust, and debris in the air. Your eyelashes sense when something comes up too close to your eyes, like an insect flying toward you, and trigger your blink reflex. Blinking also helps when you need to flush out some tiny particles or debris stuck in your puncta. Those are small openings you have in your eyelids. That's where the tears get pumped out. Your eyebrows stop sweat from running directly into your eyes. Your skin there and the shape of your bones also work together to direct the sweat toward the sides of your face. We're not the fastest, strongest, or biggest in the animal kingdom, but we're the best at long-distance running. That's because we have long legs, and our bodies can lose excess heat through sweating. Even long ago, our ancestors hunted animals by chasing them for long periods of time. Eventually, it wore smaller creatures out. 5 basic senses are taste, touch, sight, sound, and smell. But people have more senses than that. Proprioception is when your body is aware of its parts and their position, even if you don't see them. Like if your arm is behind your back, you know it's there. If you were an octopus, you wouldn't know it, because these creatures don't know their arms exist if they can't see them. Thermoception is your ability to sense temperature. Equilibrioception is a sense of balance. You also have nociception, which means you can feel pain. Then there's chronoception. That's how you can sense time passing by. There are even more senses found in the animal kingdom: electroreception and magnetoreception, but people don't have those. You can't see your taste buds. Those little bumps on the tongue are lingual papillae. There are 4 kinds of them: circumvallate, foliate, fungiform, filiform. They are all covered with taste buds, except for the last one, filiform. This one is responsible for the sense of touch in your tongue. Your pinky holds 50% of the total strength in your hand. Your liver is a very important organ that works a lot and is responsible for 500 individual functions. Up to 10% of it is made of fat. The liver can regenerate. You can burn calories when you take a hot bath, as many as you would if you took a half-hour walk. People mostly need 7 minutes to fall asleep. This time gets shorter if you just had a large, tasty meal. On average, the heart is as big as your fist. It beats 115,000 times and pumps around 2,000 gallons of blood a day.
Your body actually glows. It emits a super faint light that's at its strongest at around 3 to 4 p.m. The sad news is that this glowing is 1,000 times less intense than what your eyes can see. Humans are the only animals that have chins. Even our closest genetic relatives, gorillas and chimps, lack this small piece of bone that extends forward from the jaw. Their lower jaws slant down and back from their front teeth. Scientists still haven't figured out this mystery. The opinions about why people are made this way differ. Some researchers think chins help us chew our food. Others are sure they have something to do with speaking. A few of us think it's simply a special place to grow a goatee. The most abundant element in the human body is oxygen at 65%, but it also contains lithium, cobalt, gold, and uranium. The rarest one of all is radium. On average, humans yawn 20 times a day, partially spontaneously, for example, when you're tired, but sometimes when someone yawns near you. Scientists think it could be a thing called social mirroring. Usually, when animals mimic each other, they recognize some action as useful, so they decide to do it too. With humans, it happens when someone crosses legs, laughs, smiles at you, or your stomach acid breaks down the foods you eat and turns them into easy-to-digest particles. It also stops nasty pathogens and microbes that could make you sick. In fact, your stomach acid is so strong that it can even dissolve bone and metal. Don't start munching down on your soda cans, though. That's probably not going to end well. Your brain has more than 86 billion nerve cells. They're all joined together by 100 trillion connections. That's even more than the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. There's a good chance you can guess someone's name based on how they look. Researchers showed portrait photos to a group of people, with 4 names written below. They were asked to choose the right name for this or that person. The law of chance says you'll guess it 25% of the time, but in this research, people got the names correct at a rate of 25 to 40%, and there were more than 94,000 faces shown. Let's say a man is called Bob. People will expect for him to have a rounder face than Tim. They expect Bob to be more jolly and ready to hang out with people. It has to affect his facial appearance in some way. A woman called Catherine can be considered more serious, studious, and concentrated. That could eventually influence her facial muscles as well. When ancient Romans flexed their biceps, they thought their muscles looked like mice. That's why the word muscle translates as little mouse in Latin. Your left lung is smaller than the right one because it shares space with your heart. Experts used to think that we can only distinguish 10,000 smells. In fact, a recent study found human beings can recognize 1 trillion smells. Millennials, or people born between 1981 and 1996, are more forgetful than older people. The main cause of their forgetfulness comes from higher levels of stress. So come on, dude, chill out, okay? Some scientists think that the purpose of fingerprints is a better grip, but others believe they're there to help wick water off them and allow the skin to stretch when needed to protect it from damage. There's also a theory saying that fingerprints improve the sense of touch. Hot coffee can taste better than cold coffee. Your taste bud receptors are most sensitive when your food is at or a little bit above room temperature. Hot coffee can then seem less bitter because taste buds that detect bitterness are more sensitive when the coffee is cold. The biggest molecule in the human body is the chromosome 1. A human cell has 23 chromosome pairs, and each chromosome 1 is made of 10 billion atoms. You inhale 25 sextillion molecules in just one breath. That's 25 followed by 21 zeros. When you're walking faster, at some point, you'll feel the natural urge to start jogging. Your body wants to have a stable state, whether you're running or walking. So, if you're walking fast, it will unconsciously force you to start running. One theory is, we use more energy when walking faster than running. So that's one of the ways the body saves energy. Your pinky is a powerful little thing. Without it, your hand would lose a significant part of its power. Your index and middle fingers cooperate with your thumb to grab and pinch, and your pinky, together with your ring finger, provides grip strength. The fattiest organ in your body is your brain. Fat makes up at least 60% of its dry weight. This quality got the brain to the Guinness World Records. The organ contains around 25% of your body's cholesterol, which is vital for the brain's well-being. Your bones are 4 times harder than concrete. The strongest bone in your body is the femur. It can support up to 30 times the weight of a grown-up person. Even crazier is that our bones are made up of composite material, meaning they're both hard and elastic at the same time. Your fingernails grow twice as fast as your toenails. It would take 15.5 months for your toenails to grow 1 inch, but only 7 months for your fingernails to get this long. The outer layer of your skin is thicker on your feet than on other parts of your body. The heart has its own electrical system and can continue beating even when it's disconnected from the body. The vessels in your body are long enough to circle the Earth twice or more. The idea that we use only 10% of our brains is a myth. At any given time, you use almost 100%. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to perform simple tasks, like drink a cup of coffee. More than 70% of your brain consists of water, and it needs 20% of your body's oxygen supply. The average lifespan of one eyebrow hair is 4 months. The body of a 110-pound person contains 40 tablespoons of salt. If you ironed out all the wrinkles in your brain and laid it flat, it would be the size of a pillowcase. The brain wrinkles as there's not a lot of room in the skull, so it folds over itself as it grows. By the way, don't do that pillowcase thing with your brain. Trust me on this one. We spend 40% of our life with our eyes closed. Most of that time is when we're asleep. But don't forget to count blinking too, or while driving. You produce around 85,000 pints of spit in your lifetime. That's enough saliva to fill around 500 bathtubs. Enough said. The highest blood flow isn't actually in your heart, and it's not in your brain either. It's in your kidneys. It's super hard for us to grasp just how small an atom is. But think of it this way. Your body is made up of a staggering 7 octillion atoms. Yeah, doesn't that look like a 7 being chased by a whole mob of zeros? For adults, the blood makes up 7 to 8% of the total body weight. About 55% of your blood is liquid plasma. The rest is red and white blood cells and platelets. They form clots and prevent bleeding. You can't swallow and breathe at the same time. The food you swallow and the air you breathe go down the same part of your throat at first. Only a bit deeper does the passage split into the esophagus for food and liquid and the trachea for air. When you swallow, your airway gets automatically closed off. This prevents you from accidentally inhaling food, but occasionally it still happens. There's a name for the growling sound that your stomach makes when you're hungry. It's called borborygmi. It takes 6 to 8 hours for food to travel through your stomach and small intestine. That's because your body is trying to absorb all its nutrients. The idea that the tongue has flavor zones is a myth. All taste buds can detect 5 tastes, but some receptors are more responsive than others. Human beings are the only animals that willingly delay sleep. Just make sure you get enough.
Take a look at your fingernails. Are they a bit ridged? There are a bunch of reasons why that might happen, and it has nothing to do with your manicure skills. To start with, know that your fingernails might be a good indicator of any health problems. But those vertical ridges are normal, especially when you get older. It's your skin's way of showing it needs to slow down. New skin cells don't get produced as rapidly as they used to, so you get this texture on your fingernails. However, if this is just one of many other weird symptoms, it might be more than just a sign of aging. For instance, it may be a sign of a chemical imbalance, which can give you vertical ridges, but also make your nails look spoon-shaped. Don't put stuff in your ear. You know that. Even with Q-tips, you should always be gentle when using it. Otherwise, you could end up causing more harm. What's even more interesting is that sticking things in your ear can trigger a weird coughing mechanism, also known as the Arnold's ear cough reflex. Turns out that the ear has a say in coughing because of the vagus nerve, this long nerve road from the brain to the belly. It taps the ear, handles the voice box, and takes a detour to the stomach. This nerve runs all sorts of daily activities without us being able to control it, from speaking to eating, and even bathroom breaks. Now, the part that connects it with the ear is Arnold's nerve. This one deals with touch sensations. Stick something in your ear and it can get triggered. And it's precisely that tickle sensation that can make you cough. Think of it as a brain blip, tricking your body into believing it's got something in the throat. You end up coughing as a way to kick out the imaginary intruder. You might be missing a muscle in your arm too, but it's okay. You were most likely born that way, and you're also one of many. It's called the palmaris longus tendon, and about 14% of the population doesn't have it. Here's how you can test it out. Gently flex your wrist and touch your pinky with your thumb. If you can see a little tendon protruding on the inside of your wrist, you've got it. If you don't, that's fine. For the most part, this muscle doesn't increase the performance of our arm. Here's another little experiment you can safely try at home. Check which one of your nostrils is your favorite, even though you probably didn't even know you had one. Stand in front of a mirror, breathe out through your nose, and watch how the fog forms. Sure, there will be 2 marks on the mirror, but for most people, one's gonna be bigger. That's because we usually breathe more from one nostril at a time. Some doctors say that about 75% of our breath comes from one single nostril. It also switches sides during the day, in a process called the nasal cycle. So why not both nostrils at once? Well, it's generally believed to be all about moisture, preventing one side from getting too dry. The only time you might be able to notice the difference is when you're trying to fall asleep. Lie on your right side, and you'll see that gravity makes one part of your nose work harder. Speaking of sleep, whenever you're trying to get some rest at a new place, only a part of your brain will actually get some quality sleep. That's because our brains are wired to remain a bit more alert when we're in an unfamiliar place. This discovery explains why we often wake up feeling groggy after a night in a new apartment. This is a feature we share with birds and sea creatures who can half sleep, keeping an eye out. Back in the day, sleep researchers noticed this and named it the first night effect. Whenever someone participated in a sleep study, they noticed the quality of their rest was so bad they had to trash the data. But after the first night, it seemed to level up. We do this because back in ancient times, the chances of getting attacked by predators during the night were way higher. So it made sense to keep that part of the brain on guard for any dangers. Unfortunately, there's no switch to flip this off. So after a night in a new place, just know you'll need way more coffee. And maybe hit that subscribe button to stay updated with our newest videos for a nice pick-me-up in those snoozy days. It's possible that each time you're getting ready for a workout, your heart is already acting up, even though you aren't technically moving your muscles yet. That's because of an effect called anticipatory rise. In simple terms, it's like your brain is sending directions to your heart, telling it to get ready. These directions come in the form of chemicals, like noradrenaline and adrenaline. It's helpful because that kick in heart rate means more blood pumping out every minute, which is good for your muscles. The increased blood flow delivers oxygen and prepares your muscles to put in the required effort. The better shape your heart's in, the smoother this whole process goes. All of us have heard stories about regular people being able to lift heavy objects in stressful situations. You know, like a mom being able to lift a car to save her kid. Some are calling it hysterical strength. And it can't really be tested out in a lab because you can't just fake a sense of imminent danger. It's more about real, spontaneous moments that somehow trigger this hidden superpower. Well, even though it sounds like people are lifting a ton of weight, they're not that strong. Take the classic car lift scenario. You'd think they're lifting the whole car, but it's more like lifting a part of it. Most wheels are still on the ground. Plus, cars aren't evenly heavy everywhere. The engine's the densest part, not the area that's often being lifted. As for the hysterical strength, it's more about realizing we're stronger than we think. Our muscles usually use the least effort needed for everyday tasks. But when we need to go all out, we can recruit more muscle power. You see, our bodies are very efficient. Why use all our muscles when lifting a coffee cup? Even when we feel exhausted, chances are we're not. Researchers say we might only use 60 to 80% of our muscle strength, and that's reserved for top athletes. Apart from efficiency, our brains also don't go full power on our muscles because of a built-in safety mechanism. If we used all our strength, we could easily hurt ourselves. The simple game of peekaboo isn't just a fun pastime for babies. They love it so much because it can help with their development. You see, it's not just about covering and uncovering faces. It helps them better master the skill of visual tracking. It's also useful for understanding the concept of object permanence. Just because they can't see something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's gone forever. This knowledge that objects exist even if they're out of sight will increase their problem-solving skills when they get older. Playing peekaboo is also a good way to exercise various positive emotions. They go from surprise to anticipation to excitement and happiness. Some say they can do just fine with just 4 hours of sleep every night. But scientists say most of us adults need a good 6 to 8 hours. And the reality is that anything less than this average can lead to serious sleep deprivation. That is, of course, if you're not one of those super sleepers. These people are magical beings who thrive on less than 6 hours of sleep each night. They function properly on that little, but they also naturally wake up after just 4 or 5 hours. Only 1 to 3% of the population can claim that title. Also, no, it's genetic. You can't train yourself to be one.
The cornea is the only part of your body with living cells that doesn't have blood vessels. It gets nutrients and oxygen directly from the tear fluid on the outside, and the thick watery substance you have between the cornea on the inside, and also from the nerve fibers connected to the cornea. That's why contact lenses used to be a potential issue. The older ones were reducing oxygen supply, since the cornea mostly gets oxygen from the outside. This problem was solved, or at least reduced, when silicone hydrogel lenses came to the market. Some other parts of your body with no blood vessels are your nails, hair, outer skin layers, and tooth enamel. Did you notice your sweat sometimes smells of onions after your workout? You have nothing to worry about. There are 2 types of sweat glands in your skin. The first kind of glands are located on certain areas of your body, like the groin region and the armpits. They produce a specific oily fluid, which is a response to certain emotional experiences. Another type of sweat gland is way more common. They're distributed all over your body and are responsible for the specific sweat you get after the workout. The sweat cools your body down as it evaporates from your skin. It's 99% water, so it's practically odorless. Well, at least when it first leaves the pores and comes to the surface of your skin. But there are many types of bacteria on the human skin, and they feed on the nutrients in that sweat, together with skin flakes. One of the byproducts of this is specific chemicals, and their smell can sometimes strongly remind you of onion. You may have noticed you produce more saliva when you go for a run, especially if it's a short jog in cold weather. But if you're running a marathon and it's a nice warm day outside, you'll produce less saliva. It's your body trying to offset the drying effect, since you breathe through your mouth way more. But your body becomes more dehydrated over longer periods, which is why it's trying to conserve water by reducing saliva production. Every training you do, no matter how intensive it is, also makes you secrete more of a specific type of protein. It makes the saliva more viscous and sticky, which is why you may feel like your mouth is dry way more after your workout. Humans see the world 15 seconds out of date, which means your brain constantly keeps you a little bit in the past. This way, it helps you stabilize your vision of the world around you. Your eyes receive a huge amount of visual information. Yep, literally millions of colors, shapes, and ever-changing motion wherever you turn. It's not an easy task for your brain to process all that. The visual world alters all the time because of changes in viewpoint, light, and the rest of the outer factors. Your visual input changes because you need to blink. Plus, your head, eyes, and your entire body are always in some sort of motion. Your brain has to establish a mechanism that can create illusory stability. It automatically smooths your visual input. It doesn't analyze every little visual snapshot. It's like a time machine. You actually perceive an average of things you saw in the past 15 seconds at any given moment. The brain pulls together objects so they appear more similar to each other. That's why it tricks you into believing you're in stable surroundings. If your brain kept you updated in real time, the world would feel like a very, very chaotic place with constant changes in movement, light, and shadow, which would probably feel like you were hallucinating all the time. Your bones are really strong, but your teeth, which we also consider as part of the skeletal system, are even stronger. That's because of the enamel, the hard outer layer of your tooth. The enamel keeps the tissue and the delicate nerves inside your teeth safe. You're basically burning calories while you're thinking. When you rest and don't engage in any particular activity except for the basics, which includes digesting, breathing, and keeping yourself warm, it's the stage where your brain uses up to 20 to 25% of the total energy of your body. That means your body will burn around 350 to 450 calories per day, while pretty much doing nothing. We're not the only ones in the animal kingdom with such a mechanism. Some small mammals, like the minuscule pygmy marmoset and the tiny tree shrew, devote the same percentage of their total body energy to their brain. Most of the energy the brain burns is to help its cells, the neurons, to communicate with each other. They do it via chemical signals the brain transmits across synapses, those special cell structures. So, the brain directs a lot of energy towards synapses in order to make them work. Your brain never really rests. Even when you're sleeping, certain parts are active. So, your brain needs its fuel to work, and you're basically burning calories in your sleep. The more demanding mental tasks you take throughout the day, the more calories you burn. So, if you skip today's workout, solve some Sudoku. Do you like to rush with your ice cream? Sometimes it pays off, but if you do it often, you must know the feeling of brain freeze pretty well. It's a pretty intense and uncomfortable feeling that comes from the front or sides of your head right after you drink or eat something cold, such as a slushy drink, ice cream, or an ice pop. Some people even go through a similar sensation whenever they're exposed to cold air. Scientists are still not sure exactly why this happens, but one of the theories is the cold substance stimulates a cluster of nerves located at the back of the palate. Another theory says the blood vessels in the roof of the mouth and sinuses quickly constrict because the temperature in your mouth drops before they dilate again. Brain freeze is not something dangerous that you should be seriously worried about. And no, hanging over the table, groaning, or clasping your head in your hands won't help much. Some people like to sleep a lot. Hey, guilty as charged. But some have a certain condition called familiar natural short sleepers, which means they're kind of immune to sleep deprivation. About 1% of our population has it. They can fall short on sleep and feel pretty good about it. They're fine with sleeping for 6 hours per night. This amount would wreck the majority of people after a couple of nights. The human eye normally has 3 cones. That means we can recognize approximately 1 million different shades in the green, red, and blue spectrums of colors. But there are some people with a rare condition, so-called tetrachromats, that have 4 cones in their eyes. This allows them to see ultraviolet shades, which means they can distinguish 100 million distinct colors. Did you know your skeleton is all wet? I mean, your entire body mostly consists of water, up to 60%. That fluid is not only in your organs, muscles, and skin, it's in your skeleton too. Your bone mass is almost 1/3 water. There's this amazing hidden network a human body holds inside. Blood vessels are really small, but if you could line them all up, you'd get something huge. Your entire body boasts a network of 60,000 miles of blood vessels. One of the ways to keep your network healthy is by eating right. Have you ever wondered why our distant relatives, the primates, are so much stronger than us? In many ways, our bodies are very similar. Look at the chimp's muscle structure, for example. But our closest primate relatives are approximately 1.35 times stronger than us. The human body developed more slow-twitch muscle fibers compared to the rest of the primates. This type of muscle fiber is a less powerful one, but it lets us endure more than other primates and do things like foraging and hunting, activities that helped our distant ancestors to survive. That's also the reason why we can run a marathon. A monkey could never do it. But we'd still lose in a strength competition. Laughter is contagious. It's not just a metaphor. Researchers have found that strong emotions can make the brain activity of different people sink. Laughter is something science usually links with social creatures. People are almost 30 times more likely to laugh when in some social situations, hanging out with their friends or people they feel relaxed with. One of the theories says that you're probably going to join when you see your friend laughing because humans are empathetic beings. Your brain will release endorphins when you're laughing. These are special chemicals that make you feel safe and at ease. So we're not sure why exactly our laughter is contagious, but it feels really good, so... Join us on the bright side of life and laugh away. You wake up one morning, and while you're brushing your teeth, you notice a lump on the inside of your mouth, under your tongue. Immediately, you're concerned. You've never noticed this before? But not to worry. It's just torus mandibularis, a simple bony growth on the mandible of your mouth. If you have this extra bit of bone, you are part of the 40% of people with this anomaly. Although it can be more common depending on where you're from. For example, in the USA, this only occurs in 10% of the population. Bones are significant pieces within our bodies. We have 206 of them altogether. But some people may have an extra bone that they weren't expecting. We all have 12 pairs of ribs, equaling to 24 in total. However, 0.5% of people may have 25. The 25th is known as a cervical rib. Present from birth, it grows from the base of the neck, just above the collarbone. It can be on either side, as a fully formed rib, or just a thin strand of tissue fibers. There are some parts of our body that have remained with us throughout our evolution as a species, and some of us no longer share that same physical trait. The palmaris longus is a small tendon located in your wrist. By pressing the pads of your fourth finger and thumb, then clenching your wrist, the inside of your wrist will show the palmaris longus popping out. If this isn't visible, then you are part of a relatively small percentage that no longer possesses it. Lacking it has no effects on the strength of your grip, but being absent does give a decreased pinch strength in the fourth and fifth finger. It's believed that this muscle was actively used sometime in the evolutionary process of our species. It hasn't affected our bodies in any way, and it's merely a trait that some of us continue to have. It's also not dependent on either hand, regardless of which hand is dominant. Which hand do you use more often? If you're left-handed, you're part of the 10% club. And if you're ambidextrous, you're within the 1% to use both of your hands dominantly. Most ambidextrous people initially only use their left hand. Ambidexterity and left-handedness share the indication that they are using both sides of the brain. Right-handed people are generally dominant only to the left side of the brain. We all have tailbones, a reminder of our long story of evolution. We stopped using our tails around 25 million years ago. Although, while we are still growing as embryos, we go through the process of growing a tail, and after about 8 weeks, we lose it completely. There are some cases of humans being born with a tail. There are about 25 confirmed cases known to scientists. Those born with tails, though, won't have any real benefit, other than what the tailbone does for balance anyway. The tails have no function other than physically being there, as they have no bones. The tails only consist of nerves, vessels, and muscles. Do you find that you are a picky eater? Do you think that coriander tastes like soap? Or you can't stand pineapple on pizza? This may be due to what kind of taster you are. Up to 30% of people are considered super tasters and will experience different levels of enjoyment or disappointment from their foods. Food that is bitter to the super taster will likely be sweet to average tasters, who make up 40% of people. There are also 30% of people who are non-tasters and won't find anything too exciting. Do you have the ability to identify musical notes? About 1 in 10,000 people can flawlessly distinguish perfect pitch naturally. Although this doesn't necessarily mean that they will be the next big pop star. They're just able to easily identify a specific musical note upon listening to it. Our eye colors are so diverse. The difference in light exposure to eyes throughout the world determines how much melanin is produced, which helps create many different shades of color. Since migration has become more common over the past 100 years, the variations of shades of color are numerous. Your genes, of course, also playing a huge part. We could list hundreds of different shades of eye color to show how many variations there are, but we'll limit the distinct categories down to 6 main color groups to keep this brief. The vast majority of people have brown eyes. About 79% of the world's population share this eye color. Once, all humans only had the brown pigmentation, until around 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, when humans migrated to Northern Europe. A mutation occurred, helping the eyes to adapt to the change of light. Blue eyes became the most common of the mutated coloration, and all of them today can be traced back to one ancestor from Europe. Today, blue eyes make up around 10% of the human population. Amber and hazel eyes each take up 5% respectively. Gray eyes are up to 3%, and the rarest of eye colors are green ones, consisting of only 2%. Rarer still is heterochromia iridum, where both eyes are of different colors. It's inherited and also affected by other genetic factors. Only 1% of the human population have this incredibly rare attribute. Although blue eyes have become more common, they're only more prominent within areas where people contribute similar variants of genes, since blue eyes are a recessive trait. Just like red hair, which only occurs within up to 2% of the population. If you have red hair and blue eyes, you will be part of the smallest percentile for hair and eye variety that makes up only 0.17% of the human population. Although green, gray, and hazel eyes are less abundant than blue, their genes are more dominant. So, within the small pool of redheads, blue eyes are less likely to occur. The melanin that has helped mutate eye colors can also have other effects on the human body. A genetic mutation that affects the melanin occurs in 0.005% of people in the USA, creating albinism. The occurrence differs in many ways throughout the world, the same as the effects with eyes. In albinism, the pigment production is altered to distribute major cells that affect the coloring of the skin, the hair, and the eyes. Most people with albinism will have snow-white skin, snow-white hair, and their eyes are a pale blue-pinkish color, the pupil itself being red. The redness comes from the light reflecting off the vessels in the retina. There is another form of albinism which has a smaller amount of pigmentation, and the shade of skin and hair are slightly darker. Albinism occurs not only in humans, but practically all mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. Do you have a small hole at the front of your ear above the ear canal? This is the preauricular pit. During the first 6 weeks of a child's development, long before being born, the auricle, which is the external part of your ear, will develop. The preauricular pit forms when the auricle doesn't fully fuse. This occurs within less than 1% of humans. Although there's speculation that having this little hole is the remnant of gills that we once had from our seafaring ancestors, there's nothing solid to confirm this theory. There are some unique things we have that give us an advantage in everyday life. Some people carry a gene mutation of the DEC2 gene, also known in proper English as familial natural short sleepers. Essentially, it means people within this 1% only require about 6 hours of sleep each day. Most people will probably feel burned out after a day of this, but those lucky enough to be within this 1% will be sure to make the most out of their day. Have you ever looked at a picture and noticed that the color of something was different to what someone else can see? It may be that you have a rare ability to see more colors than everyone else, possibly seeing 100 million different kinds of shades. If you do, you're part of the rare group of people called tetrachromats, who have 4 cone cells in their eyes, unlike everyone else who has 3, and are identified as a trichromat. Studies are varied on who is part of this rare ocular phenomenon, though it's more prominent in females. It's suggested that up to 15% of women have this rare capability. Incredibly, it's an ability also shared with some species of birds, insects, fish, and other mammals.
You wake up 100 years from now and things are weird. Your body feels different. You check the mirror and, yup, it's true. You've got a second eyelid and no body hair? Sounds like sci-fi, but nope. There's actual science behind it. Think about how often you check your phone. A lot, right? Well, this might be why you have that second eyelid now. As screens took over our lives, we evolved this extra eyelid to filter out harmful blue light and reduce eye strain. Future you blinks and a translucent shield covers your eyes. It's like nature's way of protecting us from all that digital glare. Downside? We all look a bit more like robots. Now, Americans spend about 7 hours a day on the internet. Some researchers took this info and ran with it. Meet Mindy, the 3D model of humans 100 years from now. She's got the lowdown on what constant phone checking and endless office hours have done to us. Mindy's got an arched back, a thicker skull, a smaller brain, a 90-degree elbow, and something called a text claw. That doesn't feel right, does it? All those hours looking down at your phone strain your neck muscles and mess with your spine. But the text claws, that's next level weird. This mutation comes from always holding your smartphone. And those elbows? Permanently bent at 90 degrees, like some kind of stiff Barbie doll. Imagine trying to navigate crowded streets, bumping into people left and right. And body hair? We might lose it all in the future, but this is actually a pretty mysterious subject. Let's rewind the tape a bit. You've probably heard that body hair was used to protect us from harsh weather. One thing scientists have discovered is that our ancestors that started shedding hair had some pretty good advantages. The ones who lost the hair on their palms or wrists could handle stone tools and machinery way better than the other ones. There's also a famous theory known as the aquatic ape theory, which explains one reason for that. Like hippos and dolphins, we turned off the genes that produce fur. This idea suggests that our human ancestors that lived on the savannas of Africa migrated to oases during drier seasons. During these seasons, they hunted in shallow waters, and well, it turns out that hair is not a very good insulator in water, so our species lost their fur and developed a layer of fat. The question remains, in the future, will we deactivate these genes altogether and become totally hairless? Guess we'll have to wait and see. Geneticists are worried about something big: humans becoming too alike. There's a scientific risk of human alikeness or grand averaging. Open any social media app and you'll see it. Everyone dresses the same, talks the same, yada yada. But this sameness could halt human evolution. Evolution depends on genetic differences and passing them on. Over time, these differences should change the population. If the changes are big enough, a new species arises. But the 3 components needed for evolution, variation, natural selection, and geographic isolation, are pretty much fading away. Scientists call humans a single genetic continent, mixing and no longer breeding within cultural or ethnic groups. Given enough time, we might all start to look more alike. Here's a good one. Humans will develop to live longer, much longer than we do now. All along our evolution, we've been subject to external factors that determined our lifespan. Back in the Stone Ages and stuff, we were subject to dangerous predators or the encounter with other tribes other than ours that could harm us. As people would normally pass away at quite a young age, they had little room to develop important mutations. But when humans' mortality rates are lowered, the opposite happens. In the past 2 centuries, life expectancy soared to 70 years worldwide. The constant scientific development leads us to think humans might naturally evolve to live an average life of 100 years and more. Our lazy lifestyles are messing with our spines. We might end up with fewer vertebrae and shorter, bendier backs, making back pain less of a pain and perfect for our desk jobs. Future humans could be total slouchers, with standing tall becoming super rare. You know, all this talk is making me want to go for a walk. Since we're talking about lifestyle, we need to talk about food. All the processed soft foods we're eating are changing how we chew. Back in the day, when our bodies were taking form, we used to eat raw meat and plants. A study actually shows that the lower jaw reflected whether a population was primarily a hunter-gatherer or agriculturalist in nature. About 7 million years ago, our ancestors had long jaws and a face that projected forward. What do our jaws reflect about us now that our food is so soft? Some predictions say that 100+ years from now, humans might have smaller mouths with fewer teeth and weaker jaws. This also means that our faces will be smaller, without much chin. Our jaws tucked in a wee bit more. Pollution isn't just bad for the planet, it's changing us too. Future generations might get bigger nostrils and better lungs to deal with bad air quality. Imagine humans with super-powered breathing systems, thriving in polluted environments. Breathing in the future will be a whole new ballgame. These predictions might sound wild, but they're based on scientific theories. As our environment and lifestyles change, so will our bodies, in fascinating and terrifying ways. Next time you look in the mirror, remember you're seeing the human body as it is today, but who knows what it'll look like tomorrow? Embrace the mystery of our evolving selves. Humans might lose their palmaris longus muscle, that tiny tendon in your wrist that many people don't even realize they have. It's pretty much the appendix of muscles, completely unnecessary. As we evolve, we'll likely say goodbye to this little tendon because we're not swinging from trees or doing intense grip exercises anymore. Our hands are occupied with texting, typing, and swiping. So in a few generations, we might look at our smooth, tendon-free wrists and think, evolution really Marie Kondo'd our muscles. Love your toes much? Well, then you can bid one of them farewell. Our toes help us keep our balance when we're walking. Research shows that our balance is shifting inwards. If our ancestors used to rely on all their toes for balance, we ourselves don't use all of them as much. This means that we'll need our pinky toes less and less. And if this trend keeps up, it won't be long before we bid them goodbye. Okay, so there's something called directed evolution, which literally means science replacing nature. Instead of leaving it to the hands of destiny or fate, why not decide our own future? We kind of already do that when we choose a partner out of appearance or personality traits. For thousands of years, hunter-gatherers arranged marriages seeking good hunters for their daughters. But I'm talking about stuff done in laboratories. From now onwards, we have the power to control the genes of our offspring. Science can screen for genetic mutations. It can also choose an embryo with a particular eye color and things like that. Yep, DNA control is a thing of the future. If you think it doesn't get more bizarre than that, wait for this. Someone asked an AI to mock up some pictures of what humans will look like 1,000 years from now. According to this AI software, our faces will be covered in a web of wiring motors. It's like a crossover between Frankenstein and the Terminator. Perhaps this is the beauty standard of the future. Yikes! Meet Graham. Graham is a distant descendant of humanity whose body has evolved to survive a car crash. He isn't a CG model. He's a life-size statue made of silicon and real human hair. Graham is a piece of modern art. He's a speculation of what human bodies look like in the years ahead. Graham was created for a road safety campaign, but this artist depicts hyper-realistic humanoids in many different forms, even possible hybrids between humans and other species. It looks pretty weird at first. But I mean, at this rate, anything seems possible for our collective future.
People with albinism have little to no melanin. the pigment that colors hair, skin, and eyes. It's a rare condition to have. In the USA, just 1 in 18,000 to 20,000 people is albino. But ocular albinism is even more unique. Experts don't know exact numbers, but they think only 1 out of 50,000 individuals has it. If a person has ocular albinism, nothing but their eyes gets affected. Their skin and hair might be a bit lighter than those of their family members, but the difference isn't that big. Bright sunlight makes 17 to 35% of people sneeze. This phenomenon is called the photic sneeze reflex. In the Greek language, it's called sun sneezing. It happens when the nervous system misfires. When it happens, one of the nerves might get the reflexes wrong. And then, bright sunlight not only makes your pupils contract, but also activates the nose membranes. When natural, fair hair is rare in adults. It almost always darkens with age. People who are more likely to keep their hair color light are those living in the north. The Bajau is a group of nomadic people that live in the waters around the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia. Thanks to a rare DNA mutation, they can stay underwater for up to 13 minutes. The Bajau people have evolved spleens that are way larger than average. This feature provides them with a genetic advantage. Sea nomads needed to hunt for fish or look for underwater stuff that can be used in crafts. A particular gene mutation results in super dense bones that are almost impossible to break. They're several times tougher than the average person's bones. These people's skin is also less prone to aging. It might sound cool, but there are drawbacks. When such tough bones grow, they often put too much pressure on the nerves surrounding them and the brain. There are 3 kinds of cone cells in the average person's eyes. They help to recognize the colors in the blue, red, and green spectrums. Thanks to them, most people can distinguish around 1 million different shades. But those with tetrachromacy have 4 cones in their eyes. This feature allows them to see up to 100 million different hues. However rare this vision anomaly is, it's still much more common in women than in men. By the way, most people with tetrachromacy don't realize they see the world brighter than others. Only a bit more than 8% of people have counterclockwise hair whorls on their heads. A hair whorl can be single or double. Very few people have triple whorls, but those do exist. Not all experts agree with this theory, but some researchers claim there's a connection between handedness and the direction of a hair whorl. Left-handed people are 5 times more likely to have a counterclockwise whorl than those with the dominant right hand. Only 1 to 5 people in every 10,000 have an unusually shaped pupil. In most cases, it looks a bit like a keyhole or a cat's eye. This eye disorder is called iris coloboma. Scientists believe it's mostly genetic in origin. Super tasters are people who taste particular flavors more strongly than others. They have more taste buds. Those are small mushroom-shaped bumps littering the tongue. They're covered with taste receptors that tell your brain what you're eating. This feature also makes super tasters more sensitive to certain foods, for example, too sweet, bitter, or salty. They also have more pain receptors on their tongues. That's why such people avoid spicy food. The numbers vary around the world, but in general, 25 to 30% of people are super tasters. From 40 to 50% are average tasters, and 25 to 30% are non-tasters. Those have poor taste perception. Less than 1% of the world's population has a rare condition called dextrocardia. That's when the heart points toward the right side of the chest, not the left one. In rare cases, people with this unique quality have all their internal organs on the mirror image side of the body. Only 1 to 5 people in 10,000 have what's called perfect or absolute pitch. It's the ability to identify and recreate musical tones. This feature often runs in families. It's also more likely to occur in people who started their musical training before they turned 6. Ancient Greeks had stories about fire-breathing creatures called chimeras. They were a fearsome mixture of a goat, lion, and snake. In real life, chimeras are people who have 2 different sets of DNA. Scientists have recorded no more than 100 cases of human chimerism. The DEC2 gene mutation allows people to get away with just a few hours of sleep a night and still feel great. Such short sleepers don't feel tired, and they never sleep in. Their usual wake-up time is 4 or 5 a.m. Wow, not me. Only up to 5% of people have this feature. Scientists from the University of California have also made an interesting discovery. They claim that people with the DEC2 mutation need less time to perform certain tasks than regular sleepers. Morton's toe is a foot structure where the second toe is longer than the first one. Only 3 to 22% of people in the world have their feet shaped this way. Michelangelo's David and the Statue of Liberty are among them. Unlike the majority of the world's population, 1.5% of people have just one palmar crease. That's the line running across your palm. Men are more likely to have a single palmar crease than women. Most often, this feature runs in families. Only 3% of people in the world have lines that form the letters X on both of their palms. In many cultures, this rare feature is believed to be a sign of a strong personality. 1 in every 500 people has an extra rib called cervical. The average human has 24 ribs, 12 on each side of the body. But those lucky ones can have 25 or even 26. Excessive ribs are more often found in women. They're located in the cervical spine area and grow just above the collarbones. Their size can be different, from just barely developed to fully grown ones. In most cases, cervical ribs don't affect a person's well-being unless they grow too large. In this case, they do cause discomfort. No more than 50 people have ever had Rh-null blood type, so precious that it was nicknamed golden blood. It can be donated to people who have incredibly rare blood types and can't accept any other. For the first time, golden blood was discovered in an Australian Aboriginal woman. If you have a tiny hole near your ear, you're unique. It occurs in only 5% of people in the world. In the USA, less than 1% of people are born with this hole. In Asia and some parts of Africa, the number is a bit higher, from 4 to 10%. This feature is often inherited genetically. It can be present on one or both ears. This distribution is 50-50. The hole may go all the way through, or it can be a dimple, dent, or even a small lump. There's a theory that the little hole is an atavism, left from the times when all living beings had gills. There's a gene mutation that helps people keep their bad cholesterol levels extremely low. In this case, the gene instructs the body to produce a protein that curbs the amount of cholesterol in the blood. Unfortunately, only 2 to 3% of people have this useful ability. About 65% of the world's population have loop-shaped fingerprints. Another 30% of fingerprints are whorl-shaped. And only 5% of people have arch-shaped fingerprints. They can be plain or tinted arches. Around 35% of the world's population don't have to worry about the pain and inconvenience of wisdom teeth breaking through the gums simply because they don't have them. But around 5 million not-so-lucky people go through wisdom teeth removal every year. Some people have more than one row of eyelashes. This phenomenon is a genetic mutation called dystachiasis. A person with this condition has a second set of eyelashes growing behind the first. All these thick, lush lashes sure look beautiful, but they can also cause some discomfort. Some hairs can start growing in the wrong direction or in the place where an oil gland is supposed to be. It can cause irritation and tearing. Experts are sure that Tibetan people have genetically changed to be able to live at high altitudes. They have a gene that helps to adapt to falling oxygen levels amazingly fast. This evolutionary mutation has been one of the fastest ever recorded in people. It took a mere 3,000 years to develop. So get this, if someone managed to uncoil all the DNA in the human body, it would stretch out to around 10 billion miles. Hey, do the math. That's twice the distance from Earth to Pluto. And that's not the only awesome thing our body is capable of. Trillions of nerve connections are powering your memory non-stop. According to studies, after looking at 2,500 images for a mere 3 seconds, Most people can recall if they have seen these pictures with 92% accuracy. Wow! Your body glows, emitting tiny amounts of barely visible light. This glow is the product of biochemical reactions going on inside your organism. The light waxes and wanes throughout the day, but even though it is visible, you can't detect it with the unaided eye. From 1 to 6 pounds of your body weight is made up of bacteria, and from 100 million to 1 billion bacteria can live on just one tooth in your mouth. So please brush. It's impossible to taste your food without saliva, all because the chemicals in your food must be dissolved in saliva before they get detected by your taste buds. Even though it sounds like a myth, eating too many carrots can indeed turn your skin orange. Carrots have high amounts of beta-carotene. That's a compound that can cause carotenemia. If you have too much of this compound in your bloodstream, it'll hold on to parts of your body with thicker skin. I'm talking about the soles of your feet, your knees, elbows, palms, and even certain areas around your nose. But worry not, this condition is not dangerous. You can easily reverse it by decreasing the amount of beta-carotene-filled foods you consume. The chin muscles, scientifically known as the mentalis muscles, look pretty quirky, giving us mixed feelings. Just look at these creepy tiny tentacles. And still, they make it possible for us to create all kinds of facial expressions that involve the lips, chin, and cheeks. And yes, they are the culprits behind those weird wrinkles and crevices on the skin of your chinny chin chin. All because these muscles don't pull on themselves, but yank on the skin. Now, people can live without some organs, leading a normal life. The human body consists of singular organs and those that come in pairs. And speaking of the latter, you only need one of those to survive. Your small intestine is actually not so small. It's taller than you, measuring around 23 feet. Now, the cornea, that transparent front cover on your eyes, doesn't have any blood supply. Instead, it receives oxygen directly from the air. Human beings develop their unique fingerprints very early in life, while they're still embryos, just 3 months after being conceived. By the way, even if fingerprints get badly damaged, they tend to grow back to their original pattern. All people are born with a diving reflex. It can get activated and shut bodily functions if one is drowning or is submerged in the water. The human brain is by no means smooth, but if you decided to flatten all those wrinkles covering it, the brain would be the size of a pillowcase, but not as useful. Newborn babies only blink once or twice in a minute. For comparison, a grown-up person blinks at least 10 times within the same time. Our lungs are the only organs that can float on the water, all because they're made up of around 300 million balloon-like structures called alveoli. Also, even if we're perfectly healthy, our lungs are never completely germ-free or sterile. Your nose is a superhero. It's your very own heater, filter, and humidifier. This organ is lined with tiny bone-like shells called turbinates. They contain blood vessels capable of heating the air and goblet cells that can help humidify the air. Also, the air you breathe gets filtered in your nose before going further to your lungs. Now, every time you eat something, your esophagus, the organ your food travels through to reach the stomach, moves in a series of wave-like contractions, pushing the food forward. This is known as peristalsis. There's a bond between your digestive system and your brain, the gut-brain axis. This is why stress or brain issues can affect the way your body digests food. Now, even though hiccups are typically harmless and resolve by themselves after a couple of minutes, they aren't exactly pleasant. So you should probably know that they might occur because of changes in temperature. The density of your brain increases throughout your whole life, all because new neural connections pop up. They appear because the structure of the brain keeps changing too. If you don't want to sneeze, press the skin on the bridge of your nose with your fingers. When you do it, your brain receives an alarm signal. Very quickly, it puts the brake on all those other processes, including the sneezing reflex. By the way, studies have found that sneezing is your nose's way to reset. A sneeze reboots the cells that line the inside of your nose. They're called cilia. The part of your brain that's responsible for vision is in the back of your head. Interestingly, the right side of your brain controls the vision on the left side and vice versa. If you're in some loud place, for example in a club or at a concert, Close your ears to better hear your friends. Push the tragus, which is that pointy skin-covered cartilage in front of the ear canal, into your ear. Then turn this ear toward your friend. On average, when a person snores, the sound doesn't get louder than 60 decibels. That's as loud as a regular conversation. But sometimes, the noise level can reach 80 decibels. That's as loud as a working food blender. Just like salamanders regrow their tails, humans might be able to regenerate cartilage. That's the rubber-like stuff surrounding your joints. Scientists have recently discovered that cartilage could repair itself. This process is likely to be the most effective at the ankle, not that effective in the knee, and the least effective in the hip. Now, if a person has anosmia, which is also called smell blindness, they don't distinguish and detect smells. Your eyes never stop moving while taking in visual information. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see the whole picture. These movements go unnoticed because your brain is a great video editor. It stabilizes the images and connects tons of fragments into one smooth video. The liver is the only human organ that can regenerate completely. Even if it's a mere 25% of the original liver weight, the organ can get back to its full size. Your mouth burns when you're snacking on pineapple because while you're eating this fruit, it's eating you back. Well, kind of. Pineapple is the only known food that contains bromelain. That's an enzyme that breaks down proteins. Luckily, your stomach acid knows how to deal with the offending enzyme. Now, we also have bacteria that can produce electricity living in our intestines. These bacteria give off electrons, which creates tiny electrical currents. This might be the bacteria's way to generate energy. Déjà vu might
Actually be something like a brain processing lag.
There's a theory claiming that it might happen when your brain is moving information from one part to another. If there's even the tiniest delay in that process, your brain will get the same information twice. In this case, it'll process it as an event that happened before. The DEC2 gene mutation allows people to have just a few hours of sleep a night and still feel great. They don't get tired and never sleep in. On average, such people wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. No more than 5% of the world's population has this feature. Your ears might pop or even hurt when you're on an airplane. You can solve this problem by simply chewing some gum. This opens up your eustachian tube. That's a small passage that connects your throat and your middle ear. Opening this passage helps equalize the pressure in your ears and puts an end to the popping. You can also yawn to open up the eustachian tubes. Your feet are likely to become bigger with time, just like your nose and your ears. You see, when people grow older, ligaments and tendons in their feet weaken. This makes the arches flatter, and the feet become wider and longer.
What? What's happening? You were so tired, couldn't wait for your face to hit that fragrant pillow. You could barely hold your head up at 9 p.m. Now you're just rolling around in bed, changing positions, everything's so annoyingly sudden. Is it better to cover your feet or leave them uncovered? Should you sleep on your back, front, left, or right side? There's some moonlight coming through your window, so you take a peek at the other bed in the room. Your friend over there is sleeping so deeply. Asleep after about a minute. So unfair. You're spending the night because tomorrow you're both taking a small trip to a nearby town. Of course, you'll have to get up at 5 a.m. Yay! Oh, and just look at the time now. Why can't you fall asleep? Why? Well, last week you and a couple of friends went camping in the woods, and your struggles were similar. You got very tired after a long day of carrying all your stuff, walking around, preparing food, hours talking by the campfire. Your eyes were half closed. You thought you'd fall asleep in seconds, but then, nothing. Eyes wide open, every little thing bothered you, and no sleeping position was right. So I ask you, why? The first night effect, that's why. That's what you call it when you have sleep struggles in a new place. Sleep is a great thing, but evolution has made it a bit inconvenient for us from time to time. While sleeping, the brain actually shuts off for a couple of hours. That leaves you pretty unprotected. You can't spot any potential danger or defend yourself if something happens. There are animals, like dolphins and whales, that developed a sleeping system where only one part of their brain rests at a time. The other part is awake and ready to roll. We have a somewhat similar thing going on in our heads. Not that there are any dangers in your friend's room, although, when you think about all that dust under the bed, who knows what's hiding under there? We have certain instincts that showed up a long time ago, back when our ancestors lived in caves and knew that if they slept like there was no tomorrow, there might not be. That's why they also knew it wasn't safe to sleep outside their cave. That's most of the reason behind this first night effect thing. If you sleep in your own bed, in a room you feel comfortable in, your brain is like, "Phew, okay, you're safe now." But if you go to a new place, nothing helps, not even a comfy bed, a silky pillow, or the fact that you're at your good friend's place. Your brain knows you're far away from your cave, so it can't relax and let you fully fall asleep. It's a little bit like with dolphins. One part of our brain is resting, but the other is carefully listening in case something unpredictable happens. Your brain won't bother you with this half the brain is sleeping and half not thing forever. When you spend 2 nights in a row in the same place, your brain is more likely to think, "Whew, it's safe here after all." Although that pile of dust still kind of worries me, and it'll probably let you fall asleep. Now, the first night effect is not that serious if you only experience it occasionally, but if you change locations really often, you could spend most of your time tired, unproductive, or facing some other issues. Our brain has some patterns that evolution gave it, but luckily, it's also quite flexible. You can trick it and help yourself overcome the first night effect. Since your brain is afraid of the fact that you're in an unknown space, you can make it more familiar and show your brain everything's okay. You might bring something you like with you, maybe your favorite pajamas, your pillow, that soft blanket you wouldn't change for the world. Do you usually drink warm milk before going to sleep? Do the same thing at your new place. Help your brain recognize it's time to relax. Go to sleep at the same time you usually do. Have some exercise rituals before bed? Yeah, me neither. But whatever routine you have before going to sleep, do it at this new place too. If you're booking a room at a hotel, try to find one that has a bed similar to the one you have at home. If you usually sleep in a double bed, it may feel weird sprawled out in a king size. Or just bring along your favorite pajamas, it's cheaper. Nothing you do is guaranteed to help, but it's worth a shot. Side note, don't you get annoyed when you meet someone who can just sleep anywhere? It feels really, really great to lie down, tuck yourself under a warm pile of blankets, and... Whoops, sorry. Anyway, sleep's important. We literally need it to survive, just like we need food or water. We spend around 1/3 of our lives sleeping. Scientists still don't know all the reasons why we sleep, but here's what they've got so far. We sleep to store energy. 8 hours of good sleep can produce enough energy for us to have an energetic, productive day. Our body needs to restore itself while sleeping. Hair and nails grow, muscles repair themselves. All that and more happens while you sleep, no effort needed. Then there's brain function. If you put a book under your pillow during the night hoping your brain will somehow read it and be prepared for tomorrow's final, not gonna happen. But if you study hard and take in a lot of facts, a good night's sleep can definitely help you remember everything. A brown bat sleeps almost 20 hours a day, while a giraffe only sleeps a tiny bit, usually in mini 5-minute power naps. That poor giraffe doesn't know what it's missing. Cats definitely know how to enjoy life. They spend 2/3 of their life sleeping. Randy Gardner set the record for the longest period without sleep in 1964. He was 17 when he stayed awake for 11 days or 264 hours. Do not try this at home or anywhere. Peter Powers decided to set the opposite record and stayed asleep for 8 days straight. That's awesome. How come he didn't have to get up to use the bathroom? If you lie down in bed and fall asleep almost immediately, that means you're really, really tired and sleep deprived. Ideally, it should take you around 10 to 15 minutes to fall asleep. There are 2 specific times each day we feel really tired. 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. That's when we feel like taking a nap after lunch instead of getting on with our work. Show this video to your boss next time you're caught snoring in the office after your lunch break. We're actually the only mammals that delay sleep on purpose. And obviously the least cool mammals ever. Back in the day, only 15% of people dreamt in color. Now, 75% of us do that. Some folks think it's because our TVs are in color nowadays. Speaking of, we spend around 2 hours in dreamland every night. But if you want to remember your dreams, you should write them down right after you wake up. Wait too long and you'll forget all those awesome superpowers you had. Over the course of an average night, you might change sleeping positions around 20 times. Your favorite position can say a lot about your character. Lying on your back with your arms up by the pillow is called the starfish position. This type of sleeper tends to be a good listener and a selfless person who likes to help others. Also, this sleeper might let their guard down more easily. Then there's the free faller position, where you're on your stomach with your hands up by the pillow and your head turned to the side. Some say these sleepers don't take criticism well and tend to be pretty direct. Finally, the yearner is when you lie on your side with both of your arms stretched out in front of you. This type of sleeper is a bit complex, but also very open-minded. They're slow to make a decision, but they stick to it once it's made. Now, the kind and style of the jammies you wear to bed also says a lot, but we'll save that one for another video.
You're out for a couple of miles with an ingrown toenail. Ouch! Now, think about those folks who tackle extreme races and marathons. To run their best, they need top-notch training and solid shoes. But there's one more thing. Perfectly trimmed toenails. And trust me, keeping those nails in check is an art in itself, because there are many rules on how to do that right. To get ahead of nagging toenail issues, some athletes choose to have their toenails removed altogether, which helps them dodge problems like bruising and ingrown nails. Take Charlotte Vassarelli, an ultra-runner who had to say goodbye to both of her big toenails after relentless pain had been affecting her stride. The procedure takes about 45 minutes. A podiatrist will numb the toe, apply a tourniquet, and carefully remove the nail right down to the root. They then use carbolic acid to stop it from growing back. Recovery is pretty swift, but sometimes it can take a few tries to ensure the nail is completely gone. Now, let's say you've accidentally lost your toenail. And since you aren't a professional athlete, you decide to help it grow back. It will take you up to 1.5 years to fully recover. They grow 3 times more slowly than fingernails, only pushing around 1.6 millimeters a month. Plus, the older we get, the slower the process gets. With age, our toenails thicken and round out, so the growth rate slows down. It's not that everybody's feet smell bad, but if you ever notice someone's tootsies stink, here's an explanation for you. Our feet have around 250,000 sweat glands. For comparison, our armpits have 10 times fewer, only around 25,000. However, it's not the sweat that makes the feet smell. Bacteria are in charge of the stench. The primary reason is oftentimes lack of ventilation and fungus that thrive in wet environments, such as sweaty feet. Farts and burps are just a normal part of being human. When we chow down, our small intestines don't get around to digesting all foods perfectly, and gas is a byproduct of a digestive process, when bacteria break down leftovers in your gut. All that gas eventually has to escape, which means, on average, we let out about 12 to 25 farts a day. And don't worry, holding in gas won't affect you seriously. Sure, it can lead to a bit of tummy trouble, but being polite at dinner won't mess with your health in any serious way. Gross as it is, pus actually tells you that your body is doing its job. That gooey stuff, whether it's white, yellow, green, or even brown, is just a buildup of white blood cells fighting off an infection. It means your immune system is kicking in like it should. Of course, if you see pus after major surgery, that's a flag to reach out to your doctor. But for smaller injuries, Pus is just your body's way of healing, even if it's super yucky. You can even call it the white cell's precious juice, if you will. Can you give yourself a pinch without feeling anything at all? Go ahead, grab a bit of skin on your elbow and give it a good squeeze. Surprisingly, it won't feel as bad as you'd think. That's because different spots in your skin have different kinds of nerve endings. Your elbow skin is like the superhero of skin. It's tough and has fewer pain receptors. On the flip side, the more delicate parts of your body are packed with nerve endings, making them sensitive and a bit more scream-worthy when you accidentally bump into something. You can munch on anything without actually tasting it. All you have to do is pinch your nose and take a big bite of that not-so-appetizing meal. Bet it doesn't taste like much. The thing is, our taste buds only detect 5 flavors: sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and that savory umami, the flavor you get from various types of meat. Still, it's not your tongue, but your sense of smell that really brings the flavor party to life. If you hold your nose, you cut off the aroma and leave your brain to rely only on those 5 basic tastes. That's a great life hack when you gotta eat something you don't like but have to. If you're snoozing away and someone blows a puff of air at your eyes, they won't even budge. But if you're awake, your eyes are gonna flutter like crazy. So next time you want to test if someone's really sleeping or not, try this little trick. You might notice that one nostril feels more stuffed up when you have a cold, but that's completely normal. It's not unusual for one nostril to be more active while the other takes a little break, and they actually switch roles throughout the day. This is known as the nasal cycle. Typically, one nostril does about 75% of breathing for a couple of hours before the other one takes over. Since this cycle is controlled by your body's nervous system, you can enhance this natural pattern by consciously switching nostrils with each breath, which can help you relax. It might seem a bit goofy at first, but it could be a fun trick to get your kid to try when they need to calm down. The bones in your feet account for about 25% of all the bones in your body. There are 206 bones in total, and each foot has 26 of them, so that's 52 bones for your 2 feet combined. If you do the math, that's roughly 25.24% of your total bone count. Genetically, humans are like 99.9% the same. But not all of our genes are actually human. Out of the roughly 20,000 genes in our DNA, about 8% come from ancient viruses. Plus, another 40% is made up of repetitive sequences that scientists think might also be viral. These viral genes have the ability to move around and replicate themselves, which could be linked to some health conditions. So, turns out you're barely half human when it comes to your genetic makeup. Believe it or not, it's rare, but some people can actually grow teeth in their ovaries. These weird growths are called teratomas, and they can contain all sorts of stuff like hair follicles, skin, muscle, and more. The biggest teratoma ever recorded was a whopping 18 by 10 inches, and it was taken out of a 74-year-old woman. Since the brain doesn't have pain receptors, doctors can do brain surgeries with patients awake and sometimes even chatting. It might sound like a scene from a horror movie, but having patients alert during the procedure actually helps surgeons avoid causing any serious harm. It's a bit unsettling to think about, though. Surprise! Your brain is the fattiest organ in your body. It's about 60% fat, and that's a good thing. Those fatty acids are essential for optimal brain function. Imbalances could up your risk for many health issues. Still, when it comes to having kids, your seemingly fat brain gets smaller as if it's on a diet. Moms and dads experience shrinkage in areas tied to social cues and decision-making. These changes are totally normal and help with parenting. However, no matter if you have kids or not, your brain power still declines by the time you hit 24. Studies show that cognitive speed starts to drop, and you keep losing about 15% every 15 years after. So if you're nearly 40, don't be surprised if things take a bit longer to process. Your ring finger can give away your marital status, but it also has some interesting secrets even before you tie the knot. Back in 1998, evolutionary biologist John Manning found out that if your ring finger is longer, it might mean you had higher levels of prenatal testosterone. Since then, several studies have backed this up, showing that folks with longer ring fingers tend to excel in sports. If you've just checked your palms and your fingers are really long, don't be too fast to judge. Not all scientists agree with that. However, there's some proof that men with longer ring fingers can be a bit angrier than other people. Maybe that's why boxing gloves resemble mittens, to keep you guessing about who the real champ is.
Now, nobody really knows why we need the appendix, but it's always at the back of the book. Wait, wrong appendix. Some researchers claim the human appendix helped our ancestors process the tree bark and whatever they were eating at that time. As we have a way more balanced diet now, the appendix can disappear from our bodies without any consequences. Another purposeless thing in our bodies is the wisdom teeth. Yeah, they used to come in handy when dentists didn't exist, but now we can ideally make do without them. Your brain will grow by roughly 2% if you venture into space. Under normal gravity, it's thought that fluid in the brain naturally moves downwards when we stand upright. But there is evidence that microgravity prevents this, resulting in fluid accumulation in the brain and skull. When you age, your brain is gradually reducing in size. By age 75, it's much smaller than at age 30, and it starts shrinking at 40. It happens to everyone, so you just have to go with it and keep your brain busy and nimble. If you stare into your eyes in the mirror, you'll see a small pink circle settled in the corner of your eye. This is your third eyelid, useless for us but valuable for animals, like birds, to keep dust and scattered debris from getting into their eyes. This might sound familiar to you if you've heard of natural selection. In short, natural selection keeps body parts throughout generations, but some of them are harmful, so they're phased out in the next generation, and others that aren't staying, just like the third eyelid. Not only your brain shrinks as you get older, you too shrink dramatically. The bones get more brittle, the backbone gets compressed. It works vice versa too. When you rest at night, your bones kind of relax too, so you wake up taller than when you went to bed last night. Our ears help us keep the balance, so hearing isn't their only duty. Our vestibular system occupies the inner ear. Canals in your inner ear contain fluid and tiny sensors that look somewhat like hairs, helping you keep your balance. As for hairs, only a few body parts aren't covered with them. These are palms, the soles of the feet, and lips. Hairs grow even in the belly button. Their purpose is to catch lint. Mine does a great job. And not only lint, our belly buttons have an entire animal encyclopedia in them, with a range of about 70 different bacteria. Some of them can also be found in soil in Japan, and even some bacteria typical for polar ice caps. See, you have a whole naval expedition going on and didn't even know it. Only about 43% of you is you. You're over 50% tiny little creatures that mainly live in your gut and other body parts without ever leaving it. Still, even though your cells are fewer than microbial ones, there are, on average, about 100 trillion of them in you. With this in mind, your genes are less than half of what you consist of. If you take all the microbes dwelling within your body and count their genes, it'll be anywhere from 2 to 20 million genes and their combinations. If you sleep, and I recommend that you do, it doesn't mean all of your body sleeps. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take time. One thing that indeed rests while you're sleeping is your nose. You won't smell anything nasty in your sleep. The thing is that your sense of smell deactivates at night. If there's some terrible smell in your bedroom, you won't even be bothered. Scientists used to believe we could distinguish around 10,000 smells. Nope. Recent research showed that people could indicate more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and odors can even evoke some distant memories. Meanwhile, our strongest and most emotional memories are usually fake. It's the way the central memory works. It gives us the confidence to believe everything we remember is real, even though we should be confident about fewer details. Now, you don't mind if I call you a mammal, do you? Well, among us mammals, only humans can always walk on 2 hind limbs and keep that posture for their entire lives. You may want to say that kangaroos or gorillas move in the same way, but kangaroos use their tail as a third leg,
and gorillas use the help of their long arms to keep balance. Your bones take part in metabolism too. Since they mainly consist of calcium, when there's not enough of this element in your blood, bones start shedding it into the bloodstream, balancing your body. And vice versa, when there's too much calcium in your blood, it goes into the bones to be stored for later. Our height, shape of our body, and skin color depend a lot on where our ancestors used to live, but we can adapt to new conditions even within our lifespan. For example, if you move from the plains to the mountains, you'll eventually develop more red blood cells to compensate for the lack of oxygen. And naturally, if you drive from a colder climate to a hotter and sunnier one, your skin will change pigmentation slightly to adapt. Our lifespan is programmed within our cells. They constantly renew and divide, but they have a sort of internal timer that stops at some point. Some cells also stop reproducing sooner than others. On average, cells cease dividing when we reach the age of 100. If we find a way to trick ourselves into turning off the timer, we could potentially live forever. But we'd be a huge mass of wrinkles by then. Body fat acts as insulation material, energy reserve, and shock absorber. Your body sends the most fat into your waist region because that's where your internal organs are. If something happens to you, this layer of fat might as well protect those organs from serious damage. Your skull isn't a single bone. It consists of 22 different bones, many of which are fused to protect your brain. The mandible, or the lower jaw, is the only skull bone that's only attached to your head with connective tissues and muscles. This is what makes it so mobile. You can move it in any direction you like. And the smallest bone in your whole body is inside your ear. It's called the stapes, and it's no larger than a grain of rice. Some of the strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms or legs, they're in your head. The masseter is the primary muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you to chew your food. We've got two really fast muscles. They control the eyelids opening. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection. So, when the reflex is triggered, these muscles shut the eyes within less than a tenth of a second. We recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these three. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees, because every single person has slight vision differences. But it's about 1 million combinations on average. Your stomach has an impressive capacity, holding up to a half a gallon of liquids, a whole large bottle of Coke. It's pretty hard to estimate how much hard food you can squeeze into your stomach, since the food is processed with your teeth before it gets down there. There's not enough room for a whole turkey, but who knows, probably a good-sized chicken might fit it. And hey, like my grandmother said, there's always room for ice cream. Now, show me where your stomach with all that cola, chicken, and ice cream is. If you're pointing at your tummy, nope, it's up there, hidden in between your ribs. Your tummy is full of intestines. Well, here's some facts you'll find hard to digest. Your stomach has a pretty incredible capacity, being able to hold up to half a gallon of liquids. That's a whole large bottle of Coke. It's pretty hard to estimate how much hard food you can eat because it's processed with your teeth before it gets to your stomach. There's definitely not enough room for a turkey, but a good-sized chicken would probably fit in it. If you were asked where your stomach was, you would probably point to your tummy. Sorry, that's wrong. It's actually up here, hidden in between your ribs. Scientists believe that the appendix will disappear eventually. Nobody really knows why we need it, but some researchers claim it might have existed to help our ancestors digest tree bark. Because it's no longer part of our daily diet, the appendix isn't necessary and can disappear from our bodies without any consequences. The appendix isn't the only obsolete part of our body. Wisdom teeth aren't that useful either. Yeah, they used to come in handy whenever our ancestors lost some of their teeth, but the only thing they help us lose now is the money we spend extracting them. Almost all of our body is covered with hairs, even if we don't notice them. They grow even in the belly button. Their purpose is to catch lint. Check it out. See? Your liver acts as your own personal bodyguard, protecting you from toxins and many other things you don't want hanging around in your body. It's also pretty indestructible and can even regenerate. Only about 43% of you is actually you. Over 50% of the cells in your body belong to tiny little creatures that mainly live in your gut. Still, even though your own cells are fewer than microbial ones, there are, on average, about 100 trillion of them in you. See, you're not alone. With this in mind, your own genes are less than half of what you really consist of. If you take all the microbes dwelling within your body and count their genes, you'll find between 2 to 20 million. If you sleep, it doesn't mean all of your body sleeps. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take a lot of time. The nose definitely gets a good rest while you're sleeping. Amazingly, your sense of smell basically deactivates at night. You wouldn't even be bothered if there was a really terrible smell in your bedroom. No comment. The nose is probably one of the most underappreciated parts of the body. We wouldn't even be able to enjoy eating without it. About 80% of the taste of any food is thanks to the nose and its ability to recognize odors. If you hold your nose while eating, you will taste almost nothing. With no sense of smell, you're likely to recognize food mostly by texture, so an onion might seem no different than a big refreshing apple. Yeah, try that and leave me a comment on how that goes. Scientists used to believe we could distinguish about 10,000 smells, but they were wrong. Recent research showed that people are actually able to distinguish between more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and smells can even evoke some distant memories. Your nose just doesn't help you breathe and catch odors, it filters the air for sensitive throats and lungs. If we inhale dry air, the nose moistens it, cools it, and heats it if it's necessary. Also, the nose cleans the air of dirt. When you age, your brain is gradually reducing in size. By age 75, it's much smaller than at 30, and it starts shrinking by the age of 40. It happens to everyone and doesn't affect your mental strength in any way. Our brain can store only 7 bits in its short-term memory. Don't even try to compare your brain with a phone capacity, not even the one you had back in 2005. That's why you can't even learn a phone number by heart. Our short-term memory functions just like a chalkboard. You can get some information, but sooner or later, you run out of space. To check your working memory capacity, try this test. Ask a friend to write a list of 10 words and read it to you. Most people recall 7 or fewer items from that list. Your RAM, or working memory, is an essential thing that we need to perform almost any everyday activity, including basic conversations, surfing the net, and even petting your dog. Our strongest and emotional memories are often fake. The central memory gives us the confidence to believe that we remember everything, even though most of the details are made up in our heads. Not only your brain shrinks as you get older, you too shrink dramatically. The bones get more brittle, the backbone gets compressed. A similar thing happens when you rest at night. Your bones kind of relax too. Because of this, you wake up taller in the mornings than you are at the end of the day. Among mammals, only humans can walk on 2 legs for their entire lives. You might think that kangaroos or gorillas move in the same way, but kangaroos use their tail as a 3rd leg, and gorillas use their long arms to keep balance. Your bones take part in metabolism too. Since they mostly consist of calcium, when there's not enough of this element in your blood, bones start shedding it into the bloodstream, balancing your body. The same reaction works in reverse too. When there's too much calcium in your blood, it goes into the bones to be stored for later. The only bone to have a sense of humor in your body is inside your upper arm. That's why it's called the humerus. Okay, I made that one up. Moving along. The only bones that never grow are found in our ears. We can hear thanks to these tiny bones,
because they have adapted to transmit sound vibrations. Doctors call them the oscular chain. One of these hearing bones, the stapes, is the smallest bone in your entire body. It's no larger than a grain of rice. Our height, shape of our body, and skin color depend a lot on where our ancestors used to live, but we can adapt to new conditions even within our own lifespan. For example, if you move from plains to the mountains, you'll eventually develop more red blood cells to compensate for the lack of oxygen. And naturally, if you move from a colder climate to a hotter and sunnier one, your skin will get darker to adapt. Our lifespan is programmed within our cells. They constantly renew and divide, but they have a sort of internal timer that stops at some point. Some cells also stop reproducing sooner than others. On average, cells cease dividing when we reach the age of 100. That means, if we could find a way to trick ourselves into turning off the timer, we could potentially live forever. Body fat isn't just a nuisance. It acts as insulation material, energy reserve, and shock absorber. Your body sends the most fat into your waist region because that's where your internal organs are. If something happens to you, this layer of fat might protect your vitals from irreparable damage. Heads up! Your skull isn't a single bone. It actually consists of 28 different bones, many of which are fused together to protect your brain. The mandible, or the lower jaw, is the only skull bone that isn't fixed to the bone around it. It's attached with connective tissues and muscles. This is what makes it so mobile. You can move it in any direction you like. Hey, you can actually masticate with your mandible, another word for chewing. You see, the strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms or legs, they're in your head. The masseter is the main muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you chew your food. Now, we've got two really fast muscles. They control the eyelid closing. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection, so the reflex that protects them needs to be as fast as lightning. These muscles can shut the eyelids in less than a tenth of a second. People with double-jointed thumbs can bend them backward. It looks super unusual and very few people can do it. Still, it's totally okay. Even though it looks painful, it actually doesn't hurt at all for someone with a double-jointed thumb. Now, we recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these three. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees, because every single person has slight vision differences. But it's about 1 million combinations on average. You see?
There's more nerve cells and connections in your brain than there's stars in the Milky Way. If you decided to count them all, it'd take you 3,000 years. To make it easier for you, you have about 100 billion neurons in there. The brain can't actually feel pain. It does have a pain center, but it doesn't have pain receptors itself. When your head hurts, you can feel it because of the nerves, tissue, and blood cells around your brain. Your RAM, or working memory, is an essential thing that we need to perform almost any everyday activity, including conversations, surfing the net, and even petting your dog. Our strongest and emotional memories are often fake. The central memory gives us the confidence to believe that we remember everything, even though most of the details are made up in our heads. When we laugh, think, look at something, dream, move, or do some other activity with our body, small electrical and chemical signals run between neurons along those connections. And by that, neurons make and send more information than all the phones in the whole world. You're sitting somewhere outside and an insect lands on your leg. Your skin has sensory neurons and they quickly send the message to your brain at an impressive speed, 150 miles per hour. The brain sends back the message to your leg to shake the insect off very fast, and the speed that information travels is even bigger, 200 miles per hour. Our brain can store only 7 bits in its short-term memory. Don't even try to compare your brain with a phone's capacity, not even the one you had back in 2005. That's why you can't even learn a phone number by heart. Our short-term memory functions just like a chalkboard. You can get some information, but sooner or later, you run out of space. To check your working memory capacity, try this test. Ask a friend to write a list of 10 words and read it to you. Most people recall 7 or fewer items from the list. Synesthesia is a special and rare ability when people can taste music or hear colors. Only 1 in every 2,000 people has it. 5 basic senses are taste, touch, sight, sound, and smell. But people have more senses than that. Proprioception is when your body is aware of its parts and their position, even if you don't see them. Like if your arm is behind your back and you know it's there. If you were an octopus, you wouldn't know it. Because these creatures don't know their arms exist if they can't see them. Thermoception is your ability to sense temperature. Equilibrioception is a sense of balance. You also have nociception, which means you can feel pain. Then there's chronoception. That's how you can sense time passing by. There are even more senses found in the animal kingdom, but people don't have those. You can't recall a memory all by itself. When you're trying to think of one detail, like the color of the t-shirt your friend was wearing the other week, you'll remember some other details too. For example, the place where you saw him, things you were talking about. The hippocampus is the part of your brain that stores memories. It usually packs them together, including multiple small details. On average, taste buds last 10 days. One theory says déjà vu is some sort of a brain processing lag. Scientists think that it might happen when your brain is transferring information from one side to the other, and there's a split-second delay in that process. That means that your brain gets the same information twice and processes it as the event that happened before. It can create an illusion of falling. One of the theories that when you're dozing off, your brain sees the relaxing of your muscles as a sign you're in trouble and really falling. So it sends signals to the muscles to protect you by tensing up. You can physically see your nose, but the brain chooses to ignore it. Otherwise, it would stand in the way of your vision. Plus, it would be out of focus. Brain freeze is an annoying ice cream headache. That's how your brain tells you to slow down and maybe stop eating something that's so cold. People mostly need 7 minutes to fall asleep. This time gets shorter if you've just had a large, tasty meal. People used to dream in black and white much more than today. That's because they watched black and white TV. Around 12% of people can't dream in color nowadays. All your muscles relax at the same time right after you've fallen asleep. Your brain thinks you're about to fall asleep and sends quick signals to all of your muscles to awaken them. That's why it sometimes feels like you're literally falling. The hypnic jerk is a twitch you can experience while falling asleep. It's an abrupt muscle movement that comes during the non-REM sleep phase. If you sleep, it doesn't mean all your body sleeps. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take a lot of time. By the time you wake up, you'll have forgotten 50% of your latest dream. After 10 minutes, you won't remember 90% of it. When you blush, your stomach lining goes red along with your face. It happens because your sympathetic nervous system's causing an increased blood flow throughout the body. Your hair follicles have the same receptors as your nasal passages. That's why your hair can detect scents too. Sandalwood can help you develop that superpower. The nose definitely gets a good rest while you're sleeping. Amazingly, your sense of smell basically deactivates at night. You wouldn't even be bothered if there was a terrible smell in your bedroom. No comment. When you age, your brain is gradually reducing in size. By age 75, it's much smaller than at 30. And it starts shrinking by the age of 40. It happens to everyone, and it doesn't affect your mental strength in any way. No matter how hard you try, you'll never be able to tickle yourself. It's because your brain prepares the body for tickling and helps you avoid the typical laughing reaction. We recognize only purple, blue, green, yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these three. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees, because every single person has slight vision differences. But it's about 1 million combinations on average. You see? Heads up! Your skull isn't a single bone. It actually consists of 28 different bones, many of which are fused together to protect your brain. The strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms or legs. They're in your head. The masseter is the main muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you to chew your food. Now, we've got two really fast muscles. They control the eyelid closing. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection, so the reflex that protects them needs to be as fast as lightning. These muscles can shut the eyelids in less than 1/10 of a second. Our body is made of stardust. Really. The more complex elements in our body can only come about through supernovas. The first stars were just gassy lumps that were drawn together and, at some point, started the process of combustion. This finally led to a nuclear reaction in its center. Stars that were right there after the Big Bang were over 50 times bigger than our Sun is now. Inside of them, there was a constant process of making the elements, and those large stars were burning their fuel faster. Most of the elements in the human body were formed in those stars over billions of years ago. So you could realistically say that part of you is immortal. Cool, huh?
You know when you have a stuffy nose and all you can think about are the nights you've taken smooth breathing for granted? Our bodies do a lot of work to keep us comfortable every day. So, in the spirit of staying grateful, let's take a look at a couple of these amazing things the human body does every minute. Starting with our eyes, which are constantly relaying loads of visual info to the brain. The cornea acts like an entrance gate, skillfully bending light. The iris, or the colorful part, adjusts the light dose, and the lens focuses the rest onto the retina. This last one then transforms all that light into electrical signals that are sent to the brain for interpretation. Sounds like a lot of work, but it all gets done in milliseconds. This means that in just a single minute, our brain handles somewhere around 600 million bits of visual data. More than half our bodies are made of water. 55% if you're a lady and 65% if you're a gentleman, to be precise. To make sure this water balance is always in check, our bodies come equipped with a hydration monitor. It's always looking into how much water we're losing through things like sweating or even breathing. If as little as 1% of the water quantity goes missing, we'll start to feel thirsty. We also wouldn't be here if it weren't for those hearts pumping in our chests. Well, actually, just one heart per person. The speed at which it pumps can change depending on how fit you are, your feelings, your size, and even if you're doing a new yoga pose that requires a bit more effort. On average, doctors say adults have anywhere between 60 to 100 heartbeats per minute when they're resting. Now, the fitter you get, the less pressure you put on your heart, and you might even end up having a heart rate as low as 40 beats per minute. Each time this organ gets a little thump, it's pushing about 2.4 ounces of blood around your body. If your resting heart rate is 80 beats per minute, your heart's pushing 1.5 gallons of blood every 60 seconds. Ever wonder how fast your body bounces back after losing blood? We've got on average about 10 pints of it in our adult bodies. When one of them is lost, our bodies start working hard to replace it. And it's faster than you'd imagine. Within 24 hours, the volume loss is replaced. And within a few weeks, we're as good as new. That's because every second, our bodies make some 2 million fresh red blood cells. That's 120 million every minute. When it comes to white blood cells and platelets, the process is even faster. Our breathing mechanism is fascinating too. For grown-ups, the regular breath count is about 12 to 20 breaths per minute. Infants, however, have a faster rate of 30 to 60 breaths per minute. When you take in air, it requires the effort of an entire team. Your brain's command center sends signals down to your diaphragm, telling it to flatten out. Your ribs and abdominal muscles adjust to allow your chest to expand, pulling the air into your lungs. Breathing out is a bit easier. Your used-up air gets pushed out by your elastic lungs. But when you're putting in a bit more effort, that's when your abs help a bit more in the exhale process. Now, when it comes to reading, our brains can amp up that skill, sometimes reaching up to 1,000 words per minute. If you do the math, it means your brain can read a 300-page book in just 2.5 hours. One interesting feature about how our brain processes reading is that it doesn't necessarily do it in a straight line. In fact, our eyes do these unique movements called saccades. They're quick jumps across the text back and forth. Sometimes it's a big leap, other times a tiny hop. They help us soak in tons of information fast, and they happen a bunch of times every second. How big or small the jump is depends on how good we are at reading and how familiar we are with the topic at hand. Do you want to find out more about a variety of topics, like science, pop culture, or history? Well, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with our latest videos. Our skin is the largest organ we own, and is perpetually shedding around 30,000 cells every 60 seconds. Most of the time we don't even notice, but our faces and bodies are constantly removing layers. Yep, a lot of that dust around your house is you. It's a month-long journey for those fresh skin cells to pop up to the surface, and that process speeds up or slows down with age. During our 60s or even later, it can take up to 8 weeks for cell turnover, and that buildup of skin makes your complexions look a bit dull. Thankfully, there are a lot of products we can use these days to help with dry skin, like moisturizers and serums. You can't talk without your tongue. Well, you can technically, but most people won't understand a word you're saying. On any day, our tongue teams up with our lips and teeth to turn throat sounds into words that make sense. The tongue itself is flexible and speedy, capable of letting out more than 90 words a minute, using a variety of over 20 moves. While we can vocalize without using the tongue, we need it to pronounce consonants like T, D, L, and R, or if you're a pirate, R. This important organ is the same reason parrots can so easily imitate us, though most of them have no idea what they're saying. These birds have a thick tongue, and even though they've got fewer muscle moves, it helps them mimic human speech quite accurately. So be careful what you say around them. Humans also blink 15 to 20 times each minute. It might not sound like a lot, but it does mean we're spending about 10% of our awake time with our eyes shut. For many years, scientists believed that blinking served a single purpose: to keep our eyes moist. That's mostly why we produce tears, by the way. And with the help of our eyelids, this creates a little cover for the whole eyeball, preventing it from feeling itchy. However, blinking does more. A study from the past decade pointed out that when we blink, our brain hits a mini reset button. It powers down some parts linked to vision and attention. And since attention messes with how we perceive time, blinks could be like these time travel moments for our brains, or mini power naps if you like. Now, on average, people have around 35 to 48 thoughts per minute. It depends on a variety of things, like what we've been through, how we're feeling, and even where we are. When it comes to thought formation, we do know that brain cells can communicate. But understanding exactly how our ideas pop up in our minds is still a bit of a mystery. Our brain features many neurons, these fascinating cells shooting out electrical charges to talk to each other. It's these neurons that spill out brain chemicals called neurotransmitters. Think of it as passing notes that create electric signals, and as these signals surf through thousands of neurons, like a wave, thoughts pop up in our heads. Now, each time you munch on a snack, you're fueling up this power plant, which is your body. One single calorie from your food is around 4,200 energy units called joules. If you're eating 2,000 calories a day, you're transforming that into almost 6,000 joules every minute. And here's how everything happens. After you eat, the food follows its journey through your mouth, down into your stomach, and makes its way into small pieces in your bloodstream. Imagine tiny delivery trucks carrying oxygen and other useful substances to your cells. Once inside, these cells have many factories inside called mitochondria. They're responsible for turning those deliveries into adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. This is our cell's energy currency.
It's used to make more cells, it helps us move, or even send messages through electrical impulses to other cells. Come to think of it, this sure makes me want to be nicer to my body for all it does. How about you? Parietal eye, or third eye. One of the features we lost almost 250 million years ago. If you take a closer look at animals like frogs or lizards, there's a random dot somewhere between their eyes. It's not just a random dot, but an actual organ. Scientists claim it's some kind of sensor that detects daylight. Not just that, it produces melatonin, a special hormone that regulates our biological cycles, such as body temperature, reproduction, and sleep. They noticed this eye gradually became smaller over time, which means evolution realized it's a feature animals don't actually need. Maybe it happened because cells in our normal eyes became efficient enough, so we didn't need one more eye to sense or when we should sleep. Also, more and more animals were becoming warm-blooded with time, which means they were able to regulate their body temperature better. We have part of the organ even today, but in the form of the pineal gland in our brains, still in charge for melatonin. Either way, bye-bye third eye. There's a gene called GULA. With it, our ancestors could produce their own vitamin C. Not in a way they could set up a stand and sell it, but enough for the body to use it. Around 60 million years ago, the gene kinda stopped working. Not randomly. Our ancestors probably started getting enough of the vitamin C with the fruit they ate. Some of our very, very distant primate cousins that took a whole new direction in a family tree, such as lemurs, can still produce their own vitamin C. At some point, evolution decided they needed it, while we didn't. It's not just us. Our side of the primate family tree also doesn't need it anymore. Monkeys, apes, tarsiers, bye-bye gulab too. We have lemons and oranges now. Our body would lose lots of energy if it had to deal with all those traits our ancestors used to have. So it kind of deactivates those we don't need anymore. Let's say electroreception. It's the ability many amphibians and fish have. For example, the electric eel uses this feature to detect prey when water is murky, communicate, or as a navigation system. Humans and our land cousins lost this feature because electric current can't flow through the air that easily. Then, there's this thing called Jacobson's organ. It's found inside the nose and has a purpose to sense pheromones and odors. A snake flicks its tongue. Cats and horses make those weird faces. They all use Jacobson's organ. We also have it, but it doesn't quite seem to work. It doesn't send or receive signals from our brain, and scientists think we lost the ability to use it over 20 million years ago. As human habits and the way of life changed over time, we needed bigger brains. Scientists have skull remains of our ancestors from different periods, so they've realized our brain got way bigger over the last 3 million years. We needed to think of ways to deal with climate changes, big predators chasing us, finding some new, nice food. Yup, the brain grew for a reason. Food had a huge impact on our evolution. For instance, animals that only eat meat lost their sweet taste receptors because, well, they gave up on dessert, so didn't need those kinds of genes. Humans are omnivores, so we've always had a well-rounded set of receptors that could recognize taste pretty good. These taste receptors came in handy because they could tell our ancestors which foods were good for them and which ones were toxic. Some bitter taste receptors stopped working through time, since humans have changed their eating habits. For instance, we learned to use fire for cooking, so many plants were less toxic for our bodies. We became sophisticated when it came to preparing food, and also learned how to share information we discovered by communicating and using language, like in cookbooks. We didn't need all the taste receptors anymore, so our body decided to shut them down and leave those that would come in handy in the future of our species. Whew! Luckily, we didn't lose our sense for nice chocolate. Our jaws have also changed. Our ancestral relatives had way bigger jaws, but since we started eating softer and cooked foods as well as using our brains more, the structure of our head needed some changes. Teeth became smaller too, plus we lost some. Many people never developed third molars, we also call wisdom teeth. They grew between the ages of 18 and 25. We can do without them, but for our ancestors, they were pretty much vital. By this age, their teeth had already become worn out, so third molars were possibly a replacement they needed. We may wonder why exactly we have body and head hair, but scientists wonder why we don't have more of it. Hair on our scalps is long, a bit shorter in some areas, and we don't have hair on the undersides of the wrists, palms, and the soles of our feet. One of the popular theories about human ancestors says that when moving from cool, shady forests to the hot, dry savanna,
They got a new way of regulating their body temperature. They lost the fur along the way, which made it easier for them to catch their prey without overheating. Later, they discovered clothes and fire, which could keep them cozy during the cold times. Of course, there are more reasons for losing fur. Some say without fur, there's less chance of face lice or other parasites. Other researchers think that during dry seasons, humans would try to catch prey near lakes and shallow waters. Hair is not such a good insulator in water, so humans lost fur and instead got a layer of fat. Now, 85% of people can't wiggle their ears. There's a muscle that surrounds our outer ear, and scientists believe it used to allow our primate ancestors to move their ears in whichever direction they wanted. That helped them determine where the sound was coming from. After they started living in groups, they didn't have to completely rely on themselves, so they lost that feature. Apes can use their feet as well as they can use their hands, thanks to the plantaris muscle in their feet. With that muscle, animals can grip and do anything they want with objects they're holding. We also have this muscle, but it's underdeveloped and rather useless. 9% of humans are even born without it now. Hiccups are also one of the evolutionary leftovers humans may have gotten from their water-dwelling ancestors. Fish push water through gills, while amphibians gulp air. That's something mammals don't have wired into their brains, so this reflex can cause spasms of our diaphragm, which, in the end, leads to hiccups. When we're angry, our lips may twitch. That's also a feature that used to be important for our species. When they wanted to scare away predators or potential danger, they would bare their teeth, the same as bears, wolves, and chimps do. Lip twitching is the first step towards it. Many people want to climb to a higher position or sense the urge to lift their feet when feeling anxious or scared. Evolutionary biologists believe it's because so many early land mammals used to climb trees when they felt a threat coming. Goosebumps are something that we do have, but compared to old times, they're useless now. When hairy creatures felt cold, a reflex would contract those small muscles that make the base of hair follicles. That way, the coat was standing up and trapping more air, so they felt warm. Today, it's just a reminder you need a jacket and that nice feeling you get when hearing your favorite song on the radio. All living creatures can trace their ancestry to a single bacterium from billions of years ago. DNA is that special thing that holds all the information our cells need to know. We all start as one cell that then grows into trillions of them until our body is formed. DNA completely controls our growth, eye color, height, and so many other traits. It's not just humans. Even snakes have hip bones that say they used to have 4 legs just like their dear cousins, lizards. Dolphins and whales have some kind of small bones in their bodies that show they used to have hind legs. Yup, fossil remains say these marine mammals were once 4-legged and walked on land. To be precise, about 50 million years ago. Evolution doesn't actually track a straight line from species to species. It's more like a huge tree with plenty of branches, where some lead to new ones, a trait there, a trait then, some in, some out, and bam, some completely new species are there. For example, birds. Who would have thought they evolved from dinosaurs? They even lost their teeth along the way. And yeah, both seem to be coming from reptiles. Oh, and those nuts over there, that's part of my family tree. Wow, just one strand of hair can support about 3 ounces. On average, a person has about 150,000 strands. And when your hair is working as a team, it can support about 12 tons. That's 2 elephants. Not counting the peanuts. Your brain generates electricity, and it'd be enough to light up a small light bulb, if you could only figure out how. It doesn't hurt to cut your nails or hair, because the only part that's alive is under the skin. Also, nails grow faster in summer than in winter, even in places where there's not much difference between the seasons. Also, nails grow faster on your writing hand, probably because you use it more often and that stimulates the nails more. It looks like the pinky finger is weak, but that's not true at all. Without it, you'd lose 50% of your hand strength. It usually works together with your ring finger to provide power. The other 3 are more for grabbing stuff. Oh, and just like fingerprints, your tongue has a unique print too. But you can't use it to unlock your phone, at least not yet. Also, your tongue has a lot of fat in it. If you gain weight, your tongue does too. There's acid in your stomach that breaks down food. The acid is so strong that it could eat right through a piece of wood. The total length of all blood vessels in an adult is close to 100,000 miles. That's 4 times around the equator.
In your lifetime, you produce enough saliva to fill 2 swimming pools. Our ancestors needed goosebumps to make their body hair stand on end and scare away any bad guys. We don't need that anymore, but we still get them because we haven't evolved enough yet to get rid of this feature. Now, you probably never noticed, but you mostly only breathe through one nostril at a time. Every few hours, the nostrils switch jobs. That's why only one nostril gets stuffy when you have the flu. Most people think they have 5 senses, but that's not true. Scientists don't yet know themselves, but they think there's more than 20. There's sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste, and there are other senses like time, hunger, and thirst. Then there's proprioception, the sense of where your body is in space. The brain can't always tell the difference between intense happiness and intense sadness. It gets that you're experiencing a very strong emotion, but sometimes it gets a bit confused. That's why you might cry when you're very happy. Your eyes stay about the same size your whole life, but your nose and ears don't. That'd be so weird. Back in the day, all humans had brown eyes. Other eye colors developed as a result of a random mutation. Scientists think that while the first humans appeared on Earth around 6 million years ago, the first blue-eyed person appeared only 10,000 years ago. So it's pretty likely that all blue-eyed people on the planet have the same ancestor. Uncle Bob! All bones in the human body are connected to each other except one. The hyoid bone is U-shaped and located at the base of the tongue, holding it in place. Bones are stronger than steel. A strong, healthy bone could, in theory, handle the weight of 5 pickup trucks. Still, they're not the strongest body part. The strongest is tooth enamel. It's made of a bunch of different materials that make it damage-resistant. Teeth live a long time, lasting for hundreds of years. But of course, you still need to take care of them. They're the only body part that can't heal itself. Your heart works non-stop and beats around 3 billion times over the course of your lifetime. Just like your heart, your tongue never takes a vacation. Even when you sleep, it helps push saliva down your throat. By the way, where do you rest your tongue? If you keep it on the bottom of your mouth, you're doing it wrong. This posture might lead to some neck and jaw pain. If you keep it jammed up against your teeth, you're doing it wrong too. It can cause your teeth to shift and might lead to a bad bite. Instead, try to keep it sort of halfway, about a half an inch away from your teeth. Now, we can't breathe and swallow at the same time. That's because whatever we swallow and the air we breathe travel down the same path, at least at first. It's like there's a little guy directing traffic down there. Your eyes can breathe. The cornea is the only body part that doesn't have a direct blood supply. It gets oxygen right from the air. That's why when it's dry outside, your eyes might get a bit itchy. Everyone dreams. Some people say they've never dreamt a night in their life, but they just never remember any of their dreams. Some scientists think that the dreaming stage is followed by an active forgetting stage. It's probably because dreams aren't exactly full of important information, and our brain needs to clean up some extra space for something more useful. Those who are lucky enough to remember their dreams still end up forgetting about half within 5 minutes of waking up, and after 10 minutes, it's usually gone for good. When you blush, the lining of your stomach turns red too. It happens because blood starts to flow around more when you're embarrassed, as your body gets ready for something stressful to happen. Your face and stomach lining get more of it, turning them red. Also, humans are the only animals who can blush, or at least the only ones where you can see it so obviously. During one lifetime, the average human grows 590 miles of hair. The average man, if he never shaved, would have a 30-foot-long beard. Hair grows a little faster in warm climates because heat stimulates faster circulation in our bodies. Everything you'd ever need to know about you is all written down in one strand of hair. From a single hair, a scientist could tell you what you've been eating your whole life and what kind of environment you've lived in. On average, one human eats their way through 100,000 pounds of food in one lifetime. That's like 10 big hippos worth of food. Lips are one of the most sensitive parts of the human body. They have loads of nerve endings, even more than your fingers.
Also, lip skin is very thin, so you can actually see the blood capillaries inside. That's why lips are red or pink, unlike the rest of your body. Lips are also very sensitive to sun damage, so remember to apply sunscreen on them. It'll help to preserve their health and fullness over time. In addition to your fingerprints, your iris, and your tongue, your lips are also unique. The total surface of your lungs is about the same as a tennis court. Coughs and sneezes are real fast travelers. A cough can get up to 50 miles per hour. A sneeze is even faster, almost 100 miles per hour. Unless you use your fingers to help you, it's impossible to sneeze with your eyes open. Scientists don't really know what's going on there. Some say it's just a reflex, so you can't control it. Others think it happens to shield your eyes from whatever's flying out. All humans literally glow. The light comes from your body heat. It's actually 1,000 times less intense than you're capable of seeing, but still awesome. The largest flash drive in the world is actually your brain. Well, anyone's brain. The neurons in it combine together in such a way that your storage capacity is about 1 million gigabytes. It's enough to hold 3 million hours of movies. That's like a 300-year-long movie night. Hey, pass the popcorn. You start feeling thirsty when you lose about 1% of your body weight. If you lose 5%, you might even feel like fainting. Fingers don't have muscles that make them move. The muscles that do that are located in the palm and the forearm. The word muscle actually comes from the old Latin word for mouse. That's what the Romans thought their biceps looked like. On average, in their lifetime, a person walks about 110,000 miles. That's 4 times the distance around our planet, or half the distance from the Earth to the Moon. So, remember to wear comfortable shoes.
You know these before and after makeovers? Well, if you saw a pic of an average human who lived about 1 million years ago compared to a pic of an average human who lives today, you'd be astonished. And get this, it's a makeover performed by Mother Nature. Like back in the day, the earliest human species were basically tiny with long arms and short legs. They needed a big digestive tract to handle all those plants they were chowing down on, and their rib cages were super wide to make room for all the organs breaking down their food. Time went by and some of these humans started adapting to hot climates, and they all got narrow and leggy to stay cool. They started eating meat and other quick-to-digest foods, which meant they could have smaller digestive tracts and use more energy for their tall bodies and big brains. And when humans spread to colder climates, they evolved short, wide bodies to conserve heat, but they still loved their raw meat and cooked food, which could be easily processed in a short digestive tract. Check out this skeleton of an 8 to 9-year-old Homo erectus kid from East Africa. He was already 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighed 106 pounds. If he had grown up, he could have been almost 6 feet tall. His lean body was perfect for hot, dry environments. And then there were the Neanderthals, who were only about 5 foot 4 inches tall on average. They had short, broad bodies that were great for dealing with winter cold and even ice ages. Junk food is bad for our teeth, but did you know that it can also cause dental crowding? Back in the day, our ancestors had straight teeth with wisdom teeth. But thanks to processed diets and milling technologies, our jaws have shrunk and our teeth are now vying for limited space. So, if you want to avoid a mouthful of crooked teeth, stick to a less processed diet. As humans spread out and adapted to different environments, they changed their body shapes to survive. And as diets changed, so did bodies. But one thing's for sure, early humans were super active, with thicker and stronger bones than we have today. Nowadays, we're evolving sleeker and weaker bones thanks to our less physically demanding lifestyles. Yeah, it's cool to see how much we changed over time. Humans were cool back in the day, but they're probably even cooler now. You may not know it, but your bones are like supermodels. They're designed to be used all the time, and they look pretty good too. But guess what's even stronger? Your teeth. When you bite down, your teeth can exert a whopping 5,600 pounds of pressure per square inch. That's some serious chomping power. Speaking of bones, did you know that they're made up of water? Yep, about 25% of your bone mass is actually H2O. And here's another fun fact. Your eyes are like car engines. They need fluids to function properly, just like an engine needs gasoline. So when you blink up to 20,000 times a day, you're basically giving your eyes a windshield wash. Have you ever blushed and felt your cheeks turn red? Well, did you know that your stomach lining can blush too? When you blush, there's an increased blood flow in your body, and that includes your stomach lining. It turns red because it has plenty of blood vessels, and when there's more blood than usual, it shows. Now, we all know that plastic is bad for the environment, but did you know that we can actually digest it in tiny quantities? However, our digestive system can't handle grass. Grazing animals have special teeth and several stomachs to process raw leaves and grass, while we're stuck with just one stomach. We all have two super fast muscles that control our eyelids closing. They're actually the fastest muscles in our body, and they shut our eyes within a mere 0.1 second when triggered. And while we still don't know why we blink, we do know that women blink more often than men, and that we tend to blink in unison when watching a movie with friends. Maybe it's just a weird human thing. You flex that strong handshake and think it's all because of your gym grind? Ha! Turns out your pinky finger is the real MVP. No joke. Believe it or not, that little finger packs a punch and is responsible for 50% of your hand strength. Who knew the underdog could be such a powerhouse? Your toes are like two little homies that carry almost half of your body weight. And don't even listen to people who say you don't need them. Your toes are the most important guys when it comes to walking and pushing you forward. Our hair color is easily explained by genes. There are not more than 2% of people with natural red hair. They're followed by blondes, about 3%, and by all the varieties of brown shades, only about 11%. The vast majority goes to black hair, including very dark brown. Who knew that nails had a secret talent besides helping us pick up tiny objects and peel off stickers? They also give us a structure to press against so we know how firmly to hold anything. Talk about multi-talented. Move over, Rapunzel. It's not just our hair and nails that can grow. Our liver can regenerate itself from just 51% of its original size back to full size. But don't go damaging it too much, or you'll end up with scars. Did you know that the skin is the largest organ in our body? It makes up a whopping 15% of our total body weight. And if you shed more than your fluffy cat Snowball, don't worry, it's normal. We lose up to 9 pounds of skin cells every year. Gross, but fascinating. Who would have thought that tomatoes have more genes than humans? But don't worry, it's not the number of genes that matters. It's how they all work together. So go ahead and enjoy that tomato sauce on your pizza. Hold your nose the next time you eat and see how much your taste buds fade. It turns out that the nose is actually responsible for 75 to 95% of our taste perception. So don't underestimate the power of those sniffers. Keep your mouth hydrated or your taste buds won't work properly. Saliva triggers chemical reactions with enzymes that break down the food as soon as it enters your mouth. So drink up and savor those flavors. Forget about distinguishing between 10,000 smells. Recent research shows that we can actually differentiate between over 1 trillion smells. And not only that, but smells can evoke some distant memories too. So next time you catch a whiff of something familiar, take a moment to reminisce. When you're snoozing away, your sense of smell goes on vacation too. So even if your room smells like a dumpster fire, you won't even notice it. Sweet dreams, right? And speaking of dreams, did you ever wonder why some of them are in black and white, while others are like a rainbow explosion? Well, apparently it all depends on the TV you watched as a kid. So I guess your grandparents had some pretty boring dreams, huh? Now let's talk about listening to your heart. Not only is it a great metaphor for following your dreams, but it can also give you away if you're lying. Yeah, your heart rate starts racing like Usain Bolt when you're fibbing. Okay, brace yourself for this one. Even if you brush your teeth like a champ and use mouthwash like it's going out of style, your mouth is still a germ hotspot. Gross, right? But don't worry, most of those bacteria are actually good for us and keep the bad stuff away. But wait, there's more. The belly button is actually the second dirtiest place on our bodies. Yeah, I know, who knew? Since we don't really use it after we're born, it becomes a breeding ground for all kinds of icky stuff. It's got over 2,300 bacterial species living in there. So maybe it's time to give our belly button some extra TLC.
It may seem there's nothing exciting about human bones, unless you find them in your closet. But normally, they're hidden under multiple layers of cells and tissues. They're dense, hard, and unassuming. But are they? Your bones not only protect your internal organs and help you move, but also store fat and minerals. Your blood cells are produced there. Most of the bone tissue isn't even solid. How about going on a journey through your bones to see it with your own eyes? But you'll need to get through several layers of other tissues first. To start with, you'll have to squeeze through the skin, your largest organ. Be careful, it's a labyrinth of hair follicles, sweat glands, nerve endings, and blood vessels where you can easily get lost. Right under the skin, there's a layer of fat. Its main purpose is to keep your body warm. This layer consists of tiny plastic bags, each with a drop of fat, and you may have a tough time navigating around these bubbles. After passing this obstacle course, you're inside your muscles. Their cells, fibrous and long, are always ready to spring into action, helping you transport your body wherever you need. Moving through this layer of tissue is tricky because such cells form bundles, and that's what makes your muscles so strong. Imagine taking a bunch of rubber bands and stretching them. Hard? Your muscle tissue's tough like that. Finally, you reach your destination and see a thin, dense membrane. It's the outer surface of a bone. This layer consists mostly of connective tissue made up of proteins. You also spot numerous blood vessels. Their tiny perpendicular branches sneak deeper into the bone to feed bone cells. You notice that these branches lie in minuscule channels. The inside of the surface layer is filled with stem cells. They're the busiest in childhood and become less active when a person grows up. But if a bone is damaged, they jump back into action and get down to repairing it. Luckily, all your bones are intact. But if there was a fracture, you'd see nearby vessels bleeding and forming a thick lump around the injury. In about 2 days, the area would be surrounded by countless bone-producing cells. They would begin to change, turning into different kinds of cells and forming new bone between the ends of the fractured one. Anyway, it's time to move further toward your bone's hardest part, the outer layer, which is smooth and solid. Because of its density, it's also called compact bone. This kind of bone is the reason why X-rays, which can normally pass through nearly anything, including your body's soft tissues, can hardly get through your bones. This part makes up 80% of your total bone mass. It's incredibly hard to squeeze through the compact bone because it consists of numerous microscopic columns. Inside these cylinders, there are even more bone-producing cells. And in the middle, there's a central canal that connects the bone's nerve fibers and blood vessels. The cylinders go along the bone and help to prevent it from bending or fracturing. Once you get through this super hard layer, the picture around changes dramatically. You're in spongy bone. Boing boing. True to its name, it looks like a sponge or a honeycomb that consists of tiny needles. This bone tissue is way less dense than the compact bone, more flexible, and also much lighter. You notice that the spongy tissue is only near the ends of the bone you're exploring. It means you're inside one of the long bones, whose structure is a bit different from others. In the middle, it has what looks like a tunnel to you. It's made of compact bone that surrounds a cavity filled with a special substance. It's called yellow bone marrow, and it's rich in fat. But it's time to return to the spongy bone. It's mostly found at the ends of long bones, inside vertebrae, and near joints. The sponge-like tissue has open spaces in it.
They're filled with red bone marrow, which produces blood cells. While traveling further through the human skeleton, you discover that it consists of 5 types of bones. Long. They're much longer than they are wide. For example, your thigh or upper arm bones and your toes and fingers. Flat. They're thin and slightly curved. These bones are like a layered cake, spongy bone sandwiched between 2 parallel layers of compact bone. Your ribs and most of the bones in your skull are flat bones. Short bones. Shaped like cubes, they consist of a thin layer of compact bone around spongy insides. Short bones can be found in your wrists and ankles. Sesamoid. These are bones surrounded by tendons, and their main purpose is to hold tendons away from joints. There are numerous bones in your feet, hands, and knees, including the kneecap. These bones got such a name because they look like grains of wheat. Irregular bones. These don't fit into any category because their shape is too complicated. Those are most of the bones of your face and some of your skull. An adult skeleton's made up of 206 bones, and each of them has its own function. Interestingly, people are born with nearly twice as many bones, but as you grow up, these small bones fuse together and form larger ones as a person matures. If one bone's broken, those around it can't work properly either. It usually takes about 12 weeks for a bone to heal. The smallest bone in your body is dozens of times smaller than a penny. This bone's called the stapes and is located in your middle ear. The tiny thing weighs as much as 2 sesame seeds. You get a new skeleton every 10 years, because every year, 10% of your bone's mineral content gets renewed. The average person walks 1 to 3 million steps per year. That's why bones have to be so resilient, otherwise they wouldn't cope with the pressure. Your longest and strongest bone is in your leg. The femur, that's how it's called, runs from your hip to your knee. Even though your teeth are part of the skeletal system, they don't count as bones. More than half of all the bones in your body are in your hands and feet. The only bone in your body that's not connected to another is the tongue bone. It's a V-shaped bone at the base of your tongue that holds it in place. 1% of people are born with a 13th rib. Your bones aren't white. Their color is rather yellow or pinkish from the outside and deep red inside. That's because of the blood vessels in and around them. If you fracture a bone, it'll heal on its own by producing new bone cells. A cast will only help it heal straight. People have known how to deal with broken bones for ages. In ancient Egypt, around 1600 years BCE, they realigned fractured bones and bandaged them with linen. Now, you can't control your bones. You can only tell your muscles attached to your bones where to move. Your bones reach their maximum density at the age of 30. Only 10% of the world's animals, including humans, are vertebrates, meaning they have a skeletal system. A coating of special tissue called cartilage covers a bone and prevents it from rubbing directly against another one. The enamel covering your teeth is even stronger than your bones. It protects the delicate tissue and nerves underneath. The biggest joint in your body is actually your knee. It has to be large to connect 3 equally big bones: the femur, going from your hip to your knee, the kneecap, and the shin bone. Some joints hardly move or don't move whatsoever. Those are between your teeth, inside the skull, and between the first pair of ribs. Bones store minerals, for example, calcium and phosphate. They can be released in your bloodstream when necessary. And finally, the so-called funny bone isn't a bone at all. It's a nerve that runs inside your elbow. When you hit it, you feel sharp, piercing pain. The upper arm bone the nerve runs by is called the humerus. But the pain is clearly not humorous. It can be funny when it happens to someone else, though. Ready for a shock? Only about 43% of you is actually you. The rest are your friendly neighbors, microscopic creatures that help you function properly. They mainly live in your gut, but also spread to other parts of your body and never leave it. Still, even though your own cells are fewer than microbial ones,
There are, on average, about 100 trillion of them in you. If you take all the microbes dwelling within your body and count their genes, it'll be anywhere from 2 to 20 million genes and their combinations. Tomatoes have more genes than humans. Well, the part that's actually us, of course. This shouldn't concern you, though, because it's not the number of genes that matters, but the complexity of their connections. Our brain is actually pretty large, almost as large as a pillowcase. It's squeezed into a relatively small head just because it's very wrinkly. If you could spread it out, you'd see how brainy you are in reality. When you age, your brain is gradually reducing in size. By age 75, it's much smaller than at 30, and it starts shrinking by the age of 40. It happens in everyone and doesn't affect your mental strength in any way. Our brain can store only 7 bits in its short-term memory. Don't even try to compare your brain with a phone capacity, not even the one you had back in 2005. A mere byte is 8 bits. That's why you can't even learn a phone number by heart. Our short-term memory functions just like a chalkboard. You can get some info, but sooner or later you run out of space. Working memory is an essential thing that we need to perform almost any everyday activity, including basic conversations, navigating in the city, and even trying to copy the moves from a workout video. Our strongest and most emotional memories are usually fake. It's the way the central memory works. It gives us the confidence to believe everything we remember is real, even though we should be confident about fewer details. Your bones become more brittle with age as well, and your spine gets compressed. That's why older people often lose some of their height. In the same way, you're a bit taller in the morning than in the evening because your spinal column gets some rest while you're asleep. This effect is temporary, but the one that comes with age is, unfortunately, permanent. Our lifespan is programmed within our cells. They constantly renew and divide, but they have a sort of internal timer that stops at some point. Some cells also stop reproducing sooner than others. On average, cells cease dividing when we reach the age of 100. That means if we could find a way to trick our cells into turning off the timer, we could potentially live forever. Among mammals, only humans can always walk on 2 hind limbs and keep that posture for their entire lives. You might object that kangaroos and gorillas move in the same way, but kangaroos use their tail as a third leg, and gorillas use the help of their long arms to keep balance. Body fat isn't just a nuisance. It acts as insulation material, energy reserve, and shock absorber. Your body sends the most fat into your waist region because that's where your internal organs are. If something happens to you, this layer of fat might as well protect your vitals from irreparable damage. Your bones take part in metabolism too. Since they mostly consist of calcium, when there's not enough of this element in your blood, bones start shedding it into the bloodstream, balancing your body. And vice versa. When there's too much calcium in your blood, it goes into the bones to be stored for later. Your skull consists of 28 different bones, many of which are fused together to protect your brain. The mandible, or lower jaw, is the only skull bone that's only kept attached to your head with connective tissues and muscles. And the smallest bone in your whole body is inside your ear. It's called stapes, and it's no larger than a grain of rice. The only bone to have a sense of humor in your body is inside your upper arm. That's why it's called humerus. Okay, I made that one up. Move along. Some of the strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms or legs. They're in your head. Masseter is the main muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you to chew your food. We've got 2 really fast muscles. They control the eyelid closing. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection. That's why, when a reflex is triggered, these muscles shut the eyes within less than 1/10 of a second. It's been believed for a long time that a person could distinguish more than 10,000 smells. A recent research showed that people were able to distinguish more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and smells can even evoke some distant memories. We recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors.
Everything else is a combination of these three. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees because every single person has slight vision differences, but it's about 1 million combinations on average. We feel about 80% of the taste of any food thanks to the nose and its ability to recognize odors. If you hold your nose while eating, you will taste almost nothing. You might have a chocolate bar or smoked fish in your mouth. There will be no difference for you. Your sense of smell turns completely off while you're asleep. Your brain just doesn't register any smells. So if you've fallen asleep and then something starts stinking in your house, you won't be bothered in the least. Rover, you bad boy! Your nose doesn't just help you breathe and catch odors, it filters the air for sensitive throats and lungs. If we inhale dry air, the nose moistens it, cools it, and heats it if it's necessary. Also, the nose cleans the air from dirt. We can accidentally digest small objects, such as plastic items, glass, coins, and many other small objects. They'll make their way through the digestive tract within 48 hours. And there's even a man who managed to eat a whole airplane. It took him years, though, but little by little, he finished his metal meal with no trouble at all. When asked if the plane was staying there forever, the guy replied, "No, just passing through." Yeah, I made that up. Speaking of meals, you feel sleepy after a hearty lunch or dinner because of your basic instincts. Your brain thinks, and rightfully so, that when you eat, you're safe. And if you're safe, you can lie down and have some rest before going back to the world so full of dangers. Every person has their unique smell that can't be confused with anyone else's. Still, if you have an identical twin, you will both have the same smell. Now, our brain perceives giving presents as a more positive act than receiving them. Humans are social creatures. That's why, when we do something good for others, we feel good ourselves. The brain gives us a reward for acting this way in the form of oxytocin, the happiness hormone. Our eyes are powerful tools, much more so than any camera invented to this day. But still, unfortunately, they can't see the glow coming from our bodies. Yep, we're bioluminescent, just like some deep-sea creatures. The only difference is that our glow is so weak that only very sensitive capturing equipment can actually see it. Oops, time's up, gotta glow. You know what? In 10 years from now, you'll be a completely different person. Well, at least your skeleton will be. To reach its adult size, your skeleton went through a process called modeling, which means the development of growth and formation. Turns out it regenerates completely once every 10 years or so. This entire process ensures you always have healthy bone cells, which can support you and provide calcium to your body. And speaking of ways the body regenerates, every second you make 25 million new cells. I'll do the math for you. Okay, that means in about 15 seconds, you'll have made more cells than there are people in the United States. Think about that the next time you feel you haven't been productive enough. Some animals have eyes that need to adapt to hot climates, like camels, for example. Their eyes feature a third eyelid, but these sweep across from the corner of each eye. Because their environment is filled with small particles, they need to clean their eyes more frequently than other species. Now, see that little pink thing in the corner of your eye? It's also a third eyelid. Well, a vestige at least. In humans, the third eyelid is unnecessary because it no longer serves its original purpose. Next time you're tuning into your favorite song, try to pay some attention to your heartbeat. If you listen closely, you'll notice that sometimes your heartbeat may synchronize with the rhythm of the song. Now, not all genres of music have this special ability, but some tunes trigger the release of dopamine, or the happy hormone. This effect may give you a lower heart rate, breathing rate, and blood pressure. And speaking of that healthy ticker of yours, just in case you're wondering, it beats on average about 75 times per minute. This means each year, a human heart can pump enough blood to fill an Olympic-sized pool, if that were a thing. What's even more fascinating is that if you were to connect all your blood vessels end to end, it would be able to circle the Earth 2.5 times. But that's not good for your own health, so don't do that. Your heart can also continue to beat even if it's removed from the body. That's because it has its own internal battery, which allows it to beat as long as it receives oxygen. If you regularly have your nails done at a salon, you've probably noticed you need more appointments for your fingers than your toes. That's because fingernails do grow faster. The definitive scientific answer is still up for debate, but many specialists think it's because fingernails used to be claws, somewhere back in our ancient history. These days, they're flatter and have widened a bit, and it all happened when primates started using tools in their day-to-day lives, like stones and branches, so there was less use for claws. Once they got flatter, it meant nails wouldn't have gotten in the way if primates wanted to use the palms of their hands. As for why fingernails grow faster than toenails, the short answer may be the fact that we use our hands more than your feet. As such, our fingernails are more exposed, and we may have evolved to grow them faster. The more you use a certain part of your body, the more it becomes exposed to damage. So for me, I'm in danger of my mouth falling off. Oh boy. Getting back to our hands, it's about time we give a nice shout out to our humble pinkies. We don't see them as being really that important, since we don't use them for holding objects, eating, or writing. But recent studies have shown that losing the pinky on our dominant hands would have a devastating effect. Specialists haven't gathered enough data to supply specific numbers, but from what they've learned so far, losing our pinky would weaken our grip strength considerably, even if it's the lesser used finger. Adding the ring finger to that, and the effect would be worse for our grip strength. Another recent study done in the UK has shown that only about 40% of people are happy with how their nose looks. Regardless of how you feel about it, the human nose is a real-life superhero. That's because it acts as a heater, filter, and humidifier all at once. Inside each nostril, there are small, shelf-like bones that feature blood vessels. They heat the air up before it reaches other parts of our respiratory system. The mucus that's inside there handles making the air more humid. As for the filtering part, that's why we have nose hairs. Small particles get stuck on these small hairs, which helps prevent pollen, spores, viruses, or bacteria from reaching our lungs. Now, when watching cartoons, we're led to believe that the sound our heart makes is because it's touching its environment while beating. Well, it turns out that sound is actually made by the opening and closing of the heart valves. They're like small doors inside our hearts that open and close to pump blood correctly from one side of the heart to the other. For our bodies to work, blood needs to move at the right time and in the right direction, or else. Now let's talk teeth. Throughout your entire life, you'll probably spend up to 40 days total just brushing your teeth. And in case you're still wondering, teeth are not in fact bones, even though they do have a lot in common. One of the primary differences between bones and teeth is that our bones can regenerate. They are living tissue. Our teeth are not, and they remain permanently damaged once broken. Now here's another shocker. We are the only species on this planet to have a chin. There's still some debate about this subject in the scientific community, but one of the reasons why seems to be to make our jaws stronger. As humans have continued to evolve, their teeth and the muscles in their jaws got smaller and smaller, so they needed something to help with increased jaw resistance. Now, most of us have developed some specific traits depending on the area of the globe in which we live. But there is a group of people, specifically those who live in higher altitudes, that develop some pretty cool traits. That's because high-altitude environments come with less oxygen. Not only do these people survive in these locations, but they've adapted so well that they actually thrive. In the Andes Mountains of South America, people have evolved red blood cells that can carry much more oxygen. It makes their overall circulatory system much more efficient. People living in Tibet have to endure similar conditions, but surprisingly, they have adapted differently. In Tibet, they can take more breaths so that they can properly oxygenate their bodies. You've probably heard the myth about dreams only lasting a couple of seconds in reality. Turns out that yes, some of them do, but not all dreams are the same. There are a lot of things we don't understand yet about how we dream. What we do know is that they mainly happen during the rapid eye movement or REM stage of sleep. During this time, your brain is more active, about as active as it is when you're awake. And it's named REM because during the sleep stage, your eyes tend to move a lot. Dreams can happen during the other stages of sleep too, but you're less likely to remember them. As for the length of each dream, they can go from a few seconds to even 20 to 30 minutes. Also, you're more likely to remember a dream if you've woken during the REM stage. Most people have 3 to 5 dreams per night, but some people can have up to 7. I know, seems unlikely, but remember, you immediately forget most of what you dream. Just like we have unique fingerprints, we also develop unique tongue prints. Research has shown that those approximately 10,000 taste buds on our tongues are laid out in a one-of-a-kind pattern. Truth is, about 80% of what you believe is taste is actually smell. That combination of taste and smell that we perceive is what we come to know as flavor. That's probably because our sense of smell is around 10,000 times more sensitive than our sense of taste. Our mouths have also another cool superpower called mouthfeel. With the help of the somatosensory system, it allows us to sense the texture of our food. The system is activated by physical touches, such as pressure, touch, or vibrations. It's even sensitive to pain and temperature. We also use our tongues to identify the size, form, and texture of food, which is crucial for proper chewing and digestion. Hey, tongues are also good for wagging, sticking out at certain people, and trumpet playing. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.